We're back up.
Chronology.
Okay. Want to back up there for you? Yeah, you guys are good.
We're getting very good at technical difficulties.
It's like we need
My
redundancy
buttons.
or something.
I think there is.
Are we okay to proceed?
All right. Moving to the first item of our agenda for A, consideration of resolution 2021-10. A resolution providing that certain elected and or appointed officials of the town of Silverton shall be deemed not to be employees within the meaning of the workers' compensation laws.
So you'll notice that what is in your packet is not the correct resolution. The corrected resolution excludes members of the San Juan Regional Planning Commission, Library Board, Zoning Board of Adjustments, and Historical Review Committee. I sent this update resolution to you all, and there's copies present for you to review. This was adopted in the past and usually saves the town about $185.
This is the same one that this board did last year.
Yes, it's a replicate of the one that you did last year.
Any discussion or questions? It's pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 2021-10, a resolution providing that certain elected and or appointed officials of the town of Silverton shall be deemed not to be employees within the meaning of the workers' compensation laws.
A second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Weigert,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Thank you. Motion passes. The next item for B, consideration to adopt the intergovernmental agreement for the reaffirmation of the unified emergency management between San Juan County and the town of Silverton with the updated emergency management plan.
Okay, so the town and the county have an intergovernmental agreement for the establishment of the unified emergency management that was last updated and signed on March 23rd, 2011. So this updated agreement has only a few changes that I noted in your memo, and includes the updates to the emergency operations plan that was also in there. And now it includes that emergency operations plan now includes a section for the town manager and for the trustees, just giving direction on how to move forward in an emergency. So we do have Jim Donovan here. If you have any questions to these as well, he's happy to answer them. I'm just speaking for him. He's happy.
Yep, I'm here to just answer any questions that the town board has on this agreement and the plan as well as plans attached in your board packet.
I just want to thank you for sharing the emergency operations base plan and the revisions that were recently made. It's very clear and very, very well done, I think.
Yep, great, thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment.
Yes.
I just want to thank you for all you do, for Becky, your whole group, Bruce, Deanne, all of you,
Great.
keeping us safe in times of need. Love it.
Much appreciated and thanks very much. And like we like to say, it's a team effort. We're in a tiny little hamlet. We got to work together. So, but very much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Nice updates. Glad the town's included.
Yep. Any other questions?
Any questions for us?
No, I don't. These plans they get revised and sent to the state, so it gets filed with the state. But this is, I do have to say, this is kind of more of a unique situation compared to other counties. Counties and towns will often have separate plans. This is a unified plan just due to the nature of our government. So we already have a lot of shared resources. So it just really emphasizes that in an emergency, we really need to cooperate. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll make a motion to,
We're back up.
oh, we're back up?
Yep.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adopt or adopt the intergovernmental agreement for the reaffirmation of the unified emergency management between San Juan County and the town of Silverton.
And I will second enthusiastically.
Thank you.
I like that.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes, motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
And thanks for the whole OE team. All right, moving on to 4D, we're skipping 4C as requested before, to be addressed later. Kendall Test Well Project Update and consideration to approve reapplication to the CWCB in December 2021 and postponing the project until 2022.
Perfect. So Public Works Director John Seitz is not present at tonight's meeting. He had to fly out east to assist with his family. But his memo included in the packet outlines that the original cost for the test well has pretty much doubled since the quote in 2020. So this is an important project to help identify additional water sources for the town, and staff recommends reapplying to the Colorado Water Conservation District Board probably in December for more funding of up to like 75%, kind of like the same model, but we need more funding to complete this project. I'll try and answer questions.
If I'm reading this right, then, you know, the previous quote had us paying 13,851, but that'll double for us. Okay.
Correct.
I mean, I think water security is a very, very important issue and top priority, but it looks like we need some help paying for it. So I support the request to move it to next year to get more help paying for it.
Agreed. Okay, should we make a motion? Any more? We good? Motion to approve the reapplication to the CWCB in December 2021 and postpone the project till 2022.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes, motion passes. Moving on to 4E, Columbine Park Proposal Review for Architectural Services.
Would you mind seeing if Mr. Grove is on the line? So as you can see, that was the supplemental packet that is on all of your tables regarding the architectural, yes, proposal. And then I'll have Todd speak to this to help answer any questions on his included memo.
Hey, good evening, everyone. We had two submittals to the RFP. One was from Mountain Grain Architecture, the other from Muse. I'm not sure when the trustees received the Mountain Grain Architecture packet. Hopefully everyone had enough time to review that. I think the proposals are rather straightforward, and I would be happy to field any questions, and there's some additional information in memo form in your packets as well. That I think pretty well sums up what staff was thinking and offers a recommendation. And ultimately, this is a board decision, and I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Did you discover, or is there any way to tell why there was such a discrepancy between the two quotes?
No, I believe Muse charges a higher hourly rate. And I'm sure that had something to contribute to it, but the scope of services is pretty well aligned between the two.
Well, Todd, I know what I read on paper. What are your personal thoughts?
I think from the get-go, it was always the preference of staff to work with someone local. I think Durango is local enough. And we really, I think, value that opportunity to meet frequently, particularly with the scale of this project and how much it means to the community and how hard we've worked on it to date. So my recommendation would be to go with Mountain Grain Architecture, following some due diligence where at the board's direction, we would just call references and check up on that kind of stuff. More just for due diligence though.
Thank you.
I mean, the cost difference is significant, and if we prefer a local contractor, a local firm to work with, and Todd, that's your recommendation, then that's the direction I'd support.
Yeah, I noticed one of the, I guess, partners has already worked in Silverton, so I like that. Hopefully they have some experience, they know what we're about. So yeah, if they're local, I would also support it. And if that's your recommendation.
And they've worked on some high quality projects in Durango.
I'm excited to see the project move forward. I'm glad we got multiple bids. The lower priced one and the fact that it's local seems like a no-brainer, as long as Todd said, the rest of the due diligence with references pans out. Pretty exciting.
I know, I'm so glad people submitted on round 2.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I have nothing more to add.
Would someone like to make a motion to move forward with Mountain Green Architecture contract subject to completing due diligence?
So moved.
Second.
Or
Tyler got the second.
Okay, I was like, I need clarification.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearmore,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes, motion passes. All right, moving on to 4F, consideration to approve proposed rate increases for the transfer station.
And take her away, Kelly.
Okay, so Gloria brought to my attention that there really wasn't any prices in there. I had gave you a list of what the tire prices are. A couple new things that we were looking at is refrigerators. It's going to be $25 now to dispose of those at the transfer station due to the drainage of the Freon. We had not been charging before on this, and we just been eating the cost. Also on appliances, we'll be charging $10 for like stoves, microwaves, wash machines, dryers, that kind of stuff, just to kind of recoup back our costs. Section has been the same, which is $4 per cubic yard. If you have any other questions?
Can I recap it real quick to make sure that I understand it correctly and you can catch me in any errors in the recap? So we agreed to an updated agreement with Bruin Waste recently, which increased the town's cost by $230,000. And we've been meaning to do this anyway, but these additional fees will help us recoup that increase in cost to the town. And the fees are mostly related to larger things. Day-to-day trash is still included in the town utility costs. And in addition to that, we're going to be getting tags to hang in, locals will get tags to hang in cars so that, one, they're allowed to dump for free normal course trash, and for these additional items that cost money, we'll have identifying numbers so it's easy to track and for you to bill them effectively.
Correct. We'll have the sheets. That way JC is able to fill them out more properly with correct owner's name, property addresses, because right now we haphazardly get some, and we can't even figure out who they are, so.
Great.
So it wouldn't
Awesome.
technically be for free, your regular dumping. It would just be that that's already included in your
Right.
regular billing.
Residential rate is 43.30 every 2 months.
Thank you. Yes.
Just so people don't think they're suddenly getting a discount.
Right. And so people who don't have the tag will not be allowed to use the transfer station at all, or?
No.
Okay. And so what do we do about, will we still have like the campground trash bins and
Have
things?
the cap down trash outside the gate, and we have since bought signs to put around the transfer station to let people know where everything needs to go, and that on the camp trash outside that it's for camp trash only, illegal dumping, so they know.
Got it. Even for an increased fee, people who don't have a tag can't dump.
That's another piece of the puzzle that we gotta look into. We had talked before about having another attendee out there that can take money or something at the gate that they can dump that way.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And just because it's been a long time / maybe never that I've taken some of these items to the transfer station, how significant is this increase? Like, will it feel like a big shock, or will it be like, oh yeah, the last time I brought tires, it was $5 and now it's $7?
It's been about a year now, because we switched companies that pick up our tires. We get a lot of tires out there.
Yeah, okay. So it's not a shocking increase.
No, not by any means.
Yeah, okay.
How about the construction debris cost? Is that about what it was already?
Yeah, that's what it was already. And JC's really good. If it's only half a cubic yard, he's marking it $20.
Mhm.
He's being pretty fair out there. Any other questions?
Do we want to put like a proposed timeline on figuring, well, it's probably just before next summer in terms of figuring out how to manage people without tags who show up with things.
We're not gonna put the tags into effect till the beginning of next year. We're still getting them pulled together and making sure we get the letter of explanation out. Since we have Melina now that with us, she speaks fluent Spanish, so we're gonna do it English one side, Spanish on the other. That way we're gonna get everybody included and have an understanding of what's going on. And then I will also, in that letter, list out the fees so they know when they go out to the transfer station, this is what you're gonna be looking at, getting charged. We're gonna wait till the first of the year and then start it.
And,
Awesome.
and I'm sorry, how do you qualify for the tags? Like what's the qualification? Do you have?
Anybody that has a resident here in town, they'll get their tags. If you, we have several people that do rentals, it'll be their responsibility to get those tags to their people that are renting from them. And,
Okay. That was,
and if you lose your tag, we're gonna talk about what it's gonna cost to get a new tag.
Everybody gets two
and
tags.
Is there an additional fee for businesses? A little.
Businesses have their own rate. It's,
No.
you already paid your contract.
oh, my brain just stopped what it was. Business has a different rate than residential. It's like $64.95 is businesses for their trash.
Perfect. So do I hear a motion to approve the proposed rate increases for the transfer station?
So moved?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Is that Jordan?
Yeah.
Okay, you could be a little louder.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bierma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. So moving on to 4G, consideration to approve the table to farm composting agreement for the town curbside service.
So in researching the various ways in which we can facilitate composting at a community level, and in response to the trustees' direction to look into composting, I found Table to Farm Composting based out of Durango to be willing to help. They are a successful private composter who has been in Durango for the last 6 years. Attached, you will find their proposal to provide services to our community. I should note that they are willing to offer curbside weekly pickup, and this would also reduce the number of trips in transfer station as it would offset our waste we produce. The challenges I see with participating is participation and education, which Table to Farm addresses in their proposal, as well as the cost per month and helping make it affordable for all residents. In my memo, I stated 340 households, while their proposal is for 380 households. So the updated monthly price for the town would be $14,440. This number does not include the commercial cost. The commercial cost is separate. I'm asking for the trustees' direction to move forward with negotiating with Table to Farm. The other option for composting would be to find land, purchase an industrial composter, which I looked into with Fort Lewis College. They have this thing called the Rocket. Unfortunately, you still have to turn the compost, so you still have man hours involved there. So that was kind of the other route I was looking at, and it is a lot more expensive and devoting staff time and helping turn the compost. So honestly, Table to Farm option seems like a much easier way to bring in composting to our community. And we have Monique and Tyler here to help answer any questions. You guys want to come up to the podium?
Welcome.
Thanks for coming up.
Thanks for the opportunity. It's exciting. You have any questions?
Okay, well, I'll start. I've been really excited about the idea of composting in Silverton. I think Jess has too. We definitely talked about the idea that it's better to have it. It's happening here and not something that we're trucking around, that's sort of counterproductive to the idea. And I guess my just initial thought is, can we get 380 households to pay $40 a month, or can we get them to pay anything a month? I just don't know.
So, and I'm not sure there's an answer to that today.
I know. There's not, probably.
I was just a little confused about it saying the price tag per month per household could be offset with town funds. Is that not included in the 14,440 cost? That's the 14,440 is in addition to the $38 per month per household, no matter what?
No, that would be all of the households together. And so that would be what we would pay a month, and then we would bill it out through our Cassell, right? Our billing company.
So it'd be 14,440 a month that we would bill out to the households participating, and we could potentially eat some of that and charge households less than $38 a month, or I assume the number would increase significantly if we only had like 200 households participate. Something like that. Is 340 or 380 the like bare minimum? Like what happens if we get like 220 to sign up? Is it just the wait until we get to 340 or?
Yeah, I think the number needs to be enough to kind of justify, to your point, Trustee Barney, that we're coming up. So our intent would be to serve the whole town. I think that would be ideal. Also, from just a waste management perspective of we're going to be composting and moving material, it definitely makes sense for us to try and serve the whole town. So we would hope that we could do that. If that's not an option, I think we would need to talk about what another number would be. But to address your question on kind of local and driving, I think materials around, we think a lot about this because we're basically recycling compost, and in the recycling industry, like something like glass, right? You just don't want to be trucking glass around. We've done that regional look, and to us, we feel like Silverton, Mancos, Bayfield, that's about as far as we would go, and the footprint of those miles back and forth still makes sense from an overall sustainability perspective. Now, if we start going further north from here, I would definitely agree with you that at that point here, kind of return on like the sustainable investment maybe starts to go down, but we definitely feel like Silverton's in that footprint. Also, I would mention we're building a Class 3 facility, and it's like a $300,000 investment, which is cheap. They're like $1 million in Montrose. And so the infrastructure that we're putting in place in Durango, the recycling community sees that as somewhat regional. And a place like, Durango and Silverton with the mountain passes, we get maybe a little less regionality out of that facility, but it's a really big deal. It'll be the first CDPHE permitted facility within, 200 miles here. So that's just another consideration as we look at the footprint of how it makes sense to move organics in the region.
Kelly, what's our total bill to Bruin Pre? And I know it's a totally different thing. I'm just trying to figure out like context because the numbers sound large, but what was the total amount of our Bruin contract?
That was at,
Roughly. It doesn't have to be the exact number.
I do not know off the top of my head.
I guess the context I was looking at is we're talking about $172,800 a year. And our Bruin contract just went up $230,000 a year. So even though these numbers sound really big, it seems somewhat fractional, but obviously we do produce way more trash than compost. So I'm just trying to think about the best.
Okay, and another question I had, maybe Kelly, put you on the spot. You know, how many billings how many total households are we billing each month?
About 530.
Okay.
Well, that's all of that's all.
That would include like businesses,
Includes businesses and everything.
but that's okay because this is open to business. Yeah, this is open to businesses.
Have we reached out to communicate with residences and businesses that there could be a possible upcharge on their bills for this?
Not yet.
Well, and it would be an opt-in program,
Yeah.
right? It's not just a blanket, we're not charging you for compost.
And that's
It's opt-in.
That's a great point.
And I think that's where we would need to look at if we were going to subsidize.
Yes.
How we were going to manage that as like, if they didn't participate.
Because we're talking about 64% of total households, and it's probably a higher percentage of year-round full-time residents, probably more like 70-something%. So it seems like a high bar, but if we say contributed, $60,000 a year for the town, that significantly reduces probably the number that we would have to hit. But it's just a question of how much we want to invest as a town to provide the service.
I don't know if this is helpful, but we've found kind of anecdotally that food scraps make up about 40% of the waste stream. There was a 2015 waste audit done regionally in a 5-county region here in the Southwest. So, I mean, the math is kind of compelling. If 40% of the waste stream could be compost, you kind of compare it to the size of the Bruin contract. I would say that the value is certainly there. And just from like an environmental standpoint, we want to help, if we can, like educate folks around the value of compost. We don't want to do anything that makes people uncomfortable or shove anything down anyone's throat, so to speak, but help be mindful of the value that it creates.
We do provide a dividend back to you, which is kind of fun. So people get.
Ooh, dividends.
Yeah, I mean, it's a compost dividend.
Like that.
And it's kind of cool because it's like, what other service do you get where you get the product right back for your yard?
I have a question. It's more of a technical question. The bins that y'all provide, 5-gallon, 10-gallon bins, are they foolproof and protected from the critters?
Yeah, so our approach around the containers is we try to manage people's behavior. The containers themselves are very hard for bears to get open, but we require that people put them out after 6 a.m. and then take them back in. And that's what our special permit with the city of Durango requires. And then that way there isn't any food overnight. We actually find some of our anecdotes, bears will go right past our containers and go into the trash, because you know what, the trash smells worse than the compost if you're doing it right. So we really try to be, to Taylor's point about education, we try to be really communicative with our customers that you don't just can only have those bins out, for those hours during the day. And we have not seen a lot of issues.
Yeah, we really haven't had problems with bears.
That's really good. And and it's been 6 years, right? So.
I guess I have one comment. I think if food scraps take up 40%, I'm like, it would cut into the amount of trash we give to Bruin. It doesn't really, I mean, I'm all for recycling, but it's not going to change our contract with Bruin, is it?
It's just gonna be good for Bruin. It's gonna have less waste.
Right, but we just renegotiated our contract with them based on whatever the volume was now. And so, I mean, it's just poor timing. Not to say that I'm not for it. I love composting. I want to recycle. It's just, if we cut their load by not quite half, it's something to think about.
Well, then we get data from that. I mean, if we hypothetically, if we chose to sign up for something like this composting, and then Bruin does have an observable and noticeable decrease in the volume, then we know just exactly how much. Maybe ours is 40%, maybe it's 45, maybe it's 35, and then we can have information to go back and look at the contract with Bruin again.
So composting has been like a wish list item that I wasn't really expecting coming to fruition quickly. It seems like it's been talked about for a very long time. It's really, really exciting to see you guys here and a tangible proposal. And I think we can figure out a way to make this work. I think that the number 340 households is something that we could maybe mature to over time. But my suggestion would be for us to look at what we think would be, what staff thinks a reasonable opt-in would be in the first year or so. And then let's look at those numbers so that this board can consider what the total cost to town would be for this service to be available to that number of residents. So if we think that it's reasonable that 120 household, or maybe we can even do a survey between now and then and have people say I would do this service if it costs less than $40 a month. And then once we take that number, we can figure out what the town cost supplement would be. And then we can decide is that number reasonable?
Further, the way it reads, and maybe I misread it. We're jumping in with both feet here. And I guess my comment would be, is there a way to if our toe in or a pilot program or something like that, where we could kind of gauge how our community is receptive to this instead of just jumping in with both feet and writing big checks. And that's what I'm looking at.
I would just say the same thing I said earlier. It's to make it worthwhile. We're going to need to have, I think, a pilot to make it worthwhile. We want a majority of the people here.
Right.
What that number is, we don't have that number. We need to sit down and look at it because it's a cost to us to come up here. And
of course,
at 380 or 340, it made sense for us.
You have to have a break even household.
So kind of anecdotally address that. I run the greenhouse, the garden, and I have about 12 cubic yards of compost going over there right now. And I have a lot of people come to me asking to bring compost, and I have to turn them away because I can only accept so much in a really tiny space. So I think there is interest, whether or not it gets to that number or not. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I'm torn because I love compost. I used to do really large scale composting in Milwaukee before I came out here of all the beer mash from the breweries. And it would be ideal if the town could do it at a facility here and get the benefit of all that soil. I don't know if any of you purchase soil in town here, but getting soil here is really expensive. It's usually like $300 to $400 just for the delivery of 12 cubic yards. So I feel like long-term, that would be ideal. This is an awesome opportunity though, too. And I don't want to pass that up either. So I don't know if that'd be a future potential of working together with you guys to have some sort of facility in town here too, but that would be really awesome. But I don't have any answers. I'm just kind of rambling.
I wondered, a quick question for Kelly. How difficult is it to modify the little postcards that get sent out with billing to include like something that is easily returnable, like would you be willing or would you be interested in participating? Are those cards modifiable easily or no?
I can put a little sentence on them, like at the bottom where it says reduce, reuse, recycle. I can flip that.
Yeah, like right there where someone could just easily, just to get like quick, might not be the, I don't know, just quick feedback.
Or could we even do like a survey monkey?
A survey.
Yeah, that would be
Or
good.
I
maybe-
think a survey is what we really need here because just throwing out 340, I mean, it's a big commitment. We're asking people to pay twice as much to compost than what they pay to dump their waste at the station. You got to really be committed. So I think we need to go around the community and see if we can actually get the buy-in that we need. I'm with you guys. I think composting is great, but this is, for me, this is a tough sell.
No, it's an incredible idea. We want to get everyone on board, but we've got a community, a portion of our community that's on fixed costs and fixed income. And you're absolutely right.
And I'm curious if you just talk about for the public's benefit, like what kind of organics would you not accept? Or we talking leaf clippings and grass clippings and branches, or do you do meat, cheese, bones? I mean, I'm assuming fruits and vegetables, but
Yeah, I think there's a list in.
Vegetables.
not everybody has the packet, so.
So you all said fruits, vegetable and fruit scraps, eggshells, coffee grounds, unbleached filters, tea bags, wood ash, sawdust, grains and starches.
Meat and
Meat and
dairy.
dairy in small quantities.
Yeah.
What did I miss?
Meat and dairy in small quantities.
Oh, I don't eat meat and dairy in small quantities. I want
You
big
won't need to
quantities.
compost it, Jim. It'll go right down the hatch.
I'm Italian, I like my cheese.
Yeah, see, here you go.
So it's a 5-gallon bucket, and I'd say, probably 80%, 70-80% of our customers fill most of that up every week, so. And to your question about yard waste, that would be a whole nother type of thing that there aren't many communities that do like curbside yard waste, but we are working on it, and we would love to be able to do that, so we're growing in that direction.
Are you aware of grant programs that maybe the town could apply for to cover some or all of this cost?
Yeah, so we received 2 grants. I will tell you, we are 4 years into that process. We're really lucky that we got them. And, they come about every, basically maybe 6 months to a year. So you just be looking, my guess would be if you applied, were successful, and then actually built a facility, I would just look 4 to 5 years out.
And even just for these, like, it looks like $172,000 a year.
Absolutely. CDPHE regulates organics. And so you can have an exempt facility. It's only 5 cubic yards of active compost at any time. So pretty quickly, you're going to want to go to a class 3 facility. And that's the transition we're making right now. I'm 1.5 years into city and county permitting. So we are just a month away. So maybe with San Juan County, you could, expedite that, but I would just plan on probably at least 3 years from now. We kind of feel like we're making an investment for the region. If it were a slightly different region, we could probably get that footprint a little bit wider, but that's just the nature of it.
And are you looking for a 12-month commitment initially, or would it be like a 6-month commitment or a seasonal
The
commitment?
proposal is 3 years, I think is what we put.
3 years.
And it would be nice to have that commitment to know that, because we are basically going to build our infrastructure just for you. Staffing, trucking.
Also, I don't know, the greenhouse gas emissions are pretty compelling, or reduction. In our CDPHE grants, we've had to do these tools called the WARM calculator. It's a CDPHE tool which looks at the amount of organic material you're diverting and then loops like all these different factors in. But currently the waste that we're diverting is saving about 300 metric tons of carbon dioxide. And that's with about 10% of Durango signed up. That's an annual number. So it's really compelling. It excites me because like the reason we do this is for environmentalism. But I read a really interesting article, the first of its kind plant in Iceland just came online. It's pulling carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. They're pulling 4,000 metric tons a year of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And our math, if we're diverting the whole city of Durango in the next 3 to 4 years, which is kind of the plan, is to have a similar footprint. So it's pretty compelling what you can do just with a small municipality diverting food scraps away from the landfill. You know, the landfill, it creates methane. Methane is 72 to 84 times as potent of a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide. And then, you know, that number does not even quantify, and Monique's doing really neat research with EcoCycle, a nonprofit in Boulder, around the carbon sequestration benefits of soil post application. So you create compost, just diverting it saves these carbon dioxide emissions. There's a lot of neat research being done about like weighing compost on open like lands in the West and how that will carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So it's pretty cool. And I think also it's saying a lot, you know, it's like it's a neat step for the town to take. But I definitely know it's a commitment. And, you know, we want to make a commitment to the community. And like Monique said, we're local. And, you know, I love to ski up here and be in the community often. So it's like, love to work with you guys and try to bring compost to the community.
I'm super excited about this opportunity. I agree that the base cost is hard to digest for the households, but I think we can probably get creative and come up with some options to consider. Viable solution. I'd love to see it happen. But we just need to play with some numbers, I think. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming up. Any other?
Yeah, also,
Yeah.
go ahead, Jen.
Oh, you first.
Well, this is a personal request. My class is studying food right now and food waste. And I would really love to bring them to visit you guys. Just gonna kill two birds with one stone here tonight.
Great field trip.
Are you open to that? Cool.
Yeah, tours with kids, they love it.
Yeah,
Temperature probe in the vial.
perfect.
Yeah, kids aren't afraid of compost the way adults seem
No.
to be. They just dive right in and, you know, actually, we were talking the other day, it's like, I mean, there is this kind of perception about compost when you show up and you see it does not at all.
Yeah.
You add some carbon in there and you do it right, you know this. I mean, it's kind of amazing. Within weeks, it's just turned into this earthy, you know, thing. So kids love it. It's not like a gross field trip, like, you know, it's fun and they're outside and they get to kind of play around.
Great.
Gloria, can you tell us if we have any code restrictions on composting in the community right now?
You know what, Bill and I both looked through their code and we could not find any restrictions.
Okay, thank you. Because I agree 100% with what you just said. When you do it right, you have virtually no smell. And I think that's a big major misconception is that compost is stinky and it attracts bears and all these sort of negative connotations. And that may be one of the reasons that we've had such a hard time just getting community buy-in here. But I do know that this is a difficult place to compost.
My class has actually visited Jess's compost as well.
Yeah, I think it's our responsibility, you know, to look forward and make sure that we're doing everything that we can to, you know, reduce our carbon footprint and make sure that we're, you know, being stewards of the environment. It's just always finding that balance of what can we do and what can people in the community afford. And, you know, I think a little more research, and I would love to see this go forward. If we need to do some sort of subsidy and it works out, then, but I think right now we just don't quite have the information, but yeah, look forward to looking into it further.
Well, however we can help.
Well, that was going to be, thank you. Awesome segue. That was going to be my question or statement, but more of a question. And I do see a website on here in our packet, but is there a way to get a virtual field trip? I want to go.
You just want to come with my class?
Well, to better understand and to see what y'all are doing down there. And that way we can present it to the town and to the residents of our community and say, hey, this is what it is. Here are the nuts and bolts. This is what you can see it firsthand.
I mean, probably having us do a recording would be the best. The cell phone connection out there isn't that good, but what we could do is like we could do a little tour.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun, actually. Our community engagement coordinator will love that project. And we have a few shorter videos, but they don't show the whole facility, so we'd be happy to.
But some links that we can present to really
That'd be great. If you
show what y'all are doing down there.
I mean, it'd be
Awesome.
great for us to have more of that.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For the opportunity. We look forward to working with Gloria. Next steps.
Thank you so much for coming
Cool.
up.
Thank you.
It's really awesome.
Drive safe.
Is there any other questions you have for us on that?
I see my direction is to survey our community, either SurveyMonkey, Cassell postcards, or both. And then I'm also going to be looking into supplemental CDC grants that might help us out. And then, following up on the recording of the facility. That all sound like my direction?
That'd be fun.
I'll do it in a trustee report. Or bring my students. I'll bring my students to present to you guys.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is 4H, consideration for a fee waiver for an additional day rental of the Kindle facility for Justin Evilheiser and Whitney Gaskell's wedding.
I put this in your packet. They are paying for 2 days and they're requesting one more day to help set up. And it might be worth the discussion of how to handle locals facility use requests. I've only had 2 while I've been here, but notice that we don't really have kind of a policy behind it. So would like to open that up for discussion as well. Or if you want to do it on case-by-case basis, that's fine too. I wanted to see if we wanted to anything out there.
Yeah, it's kind of come up in our Parks and Rec discussions in that committee.
Should we ask Todd?
Yeah.
There it is.
Mr. Todd.
Hey, I'm walking outside. How's it going? What was the question?
What are your thoughts? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We were wondering your thoughts on locals fee waiver requests in regards to rentals and facilities.
I believe there is a local rate on the fee schedule. I don't have a copy of the fee schedule in front of me, though.
So they do already pay a local rate or a local rate. And then we have additional requests after that for waiving a fee.
And we're looking specifically at the request from Justin Evilheiser and Whitney Gaskell for the 3rd day of a $200 additional rental fee to be waived. They're already paying the local rate for 2 days. And I think we were just curious what your suggestion was in terms of, is it better to look at these on a case-by-case basis? Should we change the rules for locals to accommodate? Or, what are your thoughts in terms of the impacts?
I do like the idea of these being on a case-by-case basis. Generally, anything when there's money involved, we like to bring to the board, particularly with fee waivers, because they can have special circumstances. In Justin and Whitney's circumstance, I would be supportive of the fee waiver, as it's a small portion of the actual facility rental, and Justin's been a great employee with the town for years. So I don't know if you want to consider something for staff moving forward. This is kind of a unique instance, which is why I think we felt best bringing it before the board. Because those decisions should really be made by the board and not by staff.
Hey, Todd, historically, wasn't there a staff discount? I thought at one point in time there was a staff discount or something like that.
I'm relatively new to the events world, so without a copy of the fee schedule in front of me, I can't really speak to it.
We used
But
to
I
do
don't
a local
recall
nonprofit
a staff
discount.
rate.
Local nonprofit
Yeah.
discount. That's all I remember. I don't know if we've ever had anything for staff, but I would agree with Todd along those lines. You know, this is just taking care of somebody who's taken such good care of us. I think Justin's worked for the town for 6 or 7 years now. He's been an excellent employee, and I think this is just a small token to express our gratitude to him.
Say we do it.
I'm a huge fan of Justin and Whitney.
So I want to be careful. I know that we're talking positively here, but I'm careful. I want to be careful about the case by case basis and the perception that
Yeah,
the
it's a
board may choose
favoritism.
not to waive it if they, don't have the same kind things to say for an individual. I'd rather we have like a black and white set of circumstances. The staff one, I think, makes a lot of
That
sense to
works.
say like staff should, this is a benefit of staff to get something like this. So I just want to be careful that we're distinguishing it for non-subjective reasons.
It's a good point.
So do we want to consider a broader change to the locals discount policy and some type of staff discount or benefit? Or do we want to just for tonight talk about a staff benefit?
I think it'd be good to look at both. And definitely a staff benefit.
Do we want to consider something maybe above what they're asking for a waiver as a staff benefit? I mean, they're only looking for a $200 waiver on what would be an $1,150 fee. Do we think staff deserve a deeper discount than that would be? Or are we happy with
Todd's on.
Todd?
I was just going to suggest, I believe the wedding is on New Year's Eve, so there is quite a bit of time. I could, through email, get with the facilities subcommittee, try and work something out for the next meeting and present that in a memo form for the board to adopt. If the board wanted to give staff a little direction, and then I could kind of just work on that with the subcommittee and try and get it together by the next meeting. If you guys are more comfortable with a consistent policy.
I think this is a fine line because in the past, we've had issues generating the revenue that we need to cover the general maintenance on the facility. And so I've always been, I felt like kind of hardline on this, not wanting to give discounts, but I think a staff thing is definitely worth discussion. And as long as we can continue with the maintenance and the upgrades that we need to do to the facility, and I would entertain other discussions as well. But to me, that's paramount, is maintaining the facility and making sure that we maintain our investments.
Those seem like the two sides of it, making sure that we have sufficient revenue and also taking care of staff. I think more perks for staff are better too, in terms of retention and happiness as
And it's a
staff.
really good value too. I mean, I wonder if this is something that we can approve of, at least approve what they've requested tonight and then do what Todd asked, bump it to the committee.
I'd be okay with that. I'm really fine either way if it wants to be case by case, as long as we have a good, like you said, a good objective reason rather than just I like that person or don't like him. It's not a good way to do things. So I think there's good argument to be had to give him the waiver because he's staff. So I'm totally okay with it.
So we take a roll call?
You want to make a motion?
Just for what they're asking for, not above what they're asking for.
Well, would it be a motion to approve this request subject to, possibly more depending on what the
Additional findings?
additional findings are,
I'm fine with that.
which is not less than this amount?
Go for it.
I don't want any perception that this is a favoritism thing. Whitney and Justin are friends, so
So you plan to recuse?
if you have a wedding invitation, do you recuse from this?
Damn it, I expect a wedding invitation now. Just kidding.
I don't want you to feel left out.
No, let's do this. Let's move on.
Well, let's just clarify that real quick so we don't have any weirdness. Does this board think that Sally needs to recuse because she's friends with the people who are getting this benefit? Because we can decide if we think.
Yeah,
it's
I really
weird or
don't
not.
want to.
I think your gift better be
It
extraordinary.
drops us just about to a quorum because
I know.
I would be in the same boat. I'm sure you are as well.
I don't think you guys get a financial benefit from this. I don't have a problem with you voting on this, knowing the.
I don't have a problem with it either.
Yeah, I don't think this is a big deal. I think we should vote on it and be excited.
Okay,
Here's to love.
so we need the motion.
I'll make
Love.
a motion to approve waiving the fee of the additional day for Justin Evilheiser and Whitney Gaskell's wedding,
Subject to,
subject to additional findings in committee with staff recommendations.
You good with that, Todd?
I'm great with that. I think I can just get a consensus from the subcommittee and we can bring something back to the board, hopefully relatively soon.
Sounds good.
Second.
thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Beerma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes, motion passes. All right, moving on to 4I, consideration for a fee waiver request for the Silverton Avalanche School.
And the Silverton Avalanche School has requested fee waivers for their event. I've also, Todd's also included a list of the fee waivers that we have allocated this year, but due to staff challenges, I'm struggling to come up with a comprehensive list. So I hope to get that soon, but I was trying to kind of put together something for you all, but it seems to be a little bit more challenging than I had originally thought it would be.
Do we still have that thing in the budget labeled the good idea funds?
The discretionary fund under town, we do, it was, I think it was budgeted for 5,000.
Do you know how much is left in there at this point?
And that's what I was hoping to get for you tonight was how much we had already given away. I know that while I've been here, we have done the memorial at Memorial Park. And that was pretty much everything that I've been here for. So before that, I was trying to find information, but I wasn't able to come up with stuff as fast as I wanted to.
My vague recollection is that we're pretty low on these just because it's been a limited year of events. But it would be good to see what the total amount is.
And reading the notes, this is something that we've historically done, correct?
To give the fee waiver, I would let Todd answer that one if he knows. Because I know we're both filling in for other shoes.
I'm not sure if Jim's available. I think there's generally a discount. I'm not sure if it's been waived in its entirety or not. I just can't recall off the top of my head.
Wasn't this event at the school 2 years ago?
Yeah, so Foresaw was in 2019, and this is an international event. Actually, we've got some people who are getting piped in via Zoom. And the last time we held this was 2019 at the school. This is about Silverton Avalanche School and San County Search and Rescue. We're combined and offering this event. let's see what else would be pertinent for you guys to know. So when we have done events, the town has actually waived the fees on those in the past.
Because this would be considered a special event for outside of the scope of regular Avalanche school classes. That's what we're.
And historically, we used to use Kindle for Avalanche classes. We no longer do that. But when we've held events, we have requested fee waivers. We've requested fee waivers actually for town hall and Kindle for special events. And it all goes to SAR and SAS. So it supports our first responders, brings, Silverton is internationally known for avalanches. So it just keeps us on the map in that world. It does help out our small budget to be able to make this event happen.
Yeah, I would add after.
Hey, Michael Ackman, Deputy Director of the Avalanche School. It's a grant funded event. We have taken it on the chin the last couple of years with floods and fires and avalanches as a town. This event historically has grown every year. It allows businesses to stay open on that Columbus Day weekend. So it was interesting to hear the dialogue before this about, what would be the criteria for special events. It's truly something that's going to benefit the community and everybody here that's open for business. We've had to scale back participation. We originally wanted to really go for it this year, but with the challenges of COVID, we're originally looking at like a tent next to Kendall Hall and really blowing it out. But we've run into, the reality of the after times. So we want to get this event back going. Silverton's open for business. It is mandatory vaxxed. And it really does celebrate the professionals doing this work, both internationally and here. And something to keep in mind is that the people doing that work, are doing that on a volunteer basis. So this is our chance to kind of come together, start the winter, talk about best practice in both rescue, avalanche, and snow science. And it's funded by the American Avalanche Association. So it's pretty cool that they picked Silverton. Communities apply to bring this conference to them, and they've chosen us every year. So we're hoping we can pull it off. And any more questions you have, I'm a little bit closer to the numbers than Jim because I have to sit there all day on the computer. So. Or anything you'd like me to speak to about?
I have a procedural question, I guess. I think I'll be recusing from this vote because I'm part of the search and rescue. Does that mean that I can't comment on it?
We have Martha, and I'd defer to her.
Martha, are you on?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
Tyler's the director of search and rescue.
No, I'm ambulance, but I work for search and rescue on, it's complex, but I do work for them when we have rescues out in the county.
And this event benefits them financially.
So potentially you have a financial interest, so you should not comment and recuse from the vote.
So that's in contradictory to what our former council said, that we could comment on it. We just couldn't vote. But we can comment on the subject. So you're saying we shouldn't now?
My understanding of the way, most communities handle that is to not permit comments. If you're recused from an item because you have a conflict of interest, then you're not permitted to participate in at all. The reason for that is, even though you might recuse yourself from the final vote, basically by your comments, you are essentially lobbying or
Influencing.
trying to influence your fellow elected officials. And so that's how I have interpreted it over the years.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I went to the 2019 event. It was awesome. It was very well attended. Is the Kendall Rec Center large enough?
Not for what we'd like to go for, but we're budgeting and planning for real, not ideal in the
Okay.
first year out after. There is a malaise with trying to get people to come out. The Colorado conference just went virtual. Utah wants to go virtual. I think they're going to decide to, but we are alongside this. We have done our darndest to write grants to subsidize the ticket price, because historically it's an economy of scale. It's a lot of people, or you bring in vendors to kind of subsidize, you bring in all the gear manufacturers. Gear manufacturers are holding like virtual, I mean, Outdoor Retailer this year was like, Bob's Jerky, like none of the big companies go right now. So the other thing too, just a financial consideration, and and Todd's been amazing on this because we're trying to pay for what we can pay for. And often we would just book, it's 2 free rentals for nonprofits a year is what it's been for as long as I've been here. But we had to burn one of those rentals on COVID mitigation stuff. So we ended up working out a deal with Lisa and Todd to rent the park facilities, because we basically taught outside in that stage shed all winter. So normally I would just be asking for the 2 days and make Kindle work. We're in the unique position where we already burned one of those days. And we want to keep everything in the deposits and all of that, but in order to make it happen, we did
I'd say like in our Parks and Rec meetings that we had about the fee waiver schedule, this type of scenario came up a lot. And I think this is like a perfect situation in where I would say the fee waiver is totally justified. It's a lesser busy time of the year. You're not taking the facility away from someone else who's going to be renting it for, more money. And I feel like it's going to a good cause, and it'd be a good thing to support.
Isn't the Silverton Avalanche School the oldest?
Yeah, and I didn't want to drop that in there, but it is our 60th birthday, so it's, I think it's in your packet, so this is.
So birthday present somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's, what we'd really like is people to come out and celebrate with us. That would be great. I know a lot of you are in, professions or careers that put you in touch with people, and it's felt weird being in a kind of service-based educational industry, whether it's teachers or instructors or guides. And we're really trying to welcome people back here and try to harness that momentum right into the winter. So that's all I got, unless you guys have any more questions.
Thank you.
For me.
Sure.
Awesome. Thanks, appreciate it.
And my thought is, Silverton, despite its small size, is one of the premier snow and avalanche science and knowledge locations in the world. And it's largely because Silverton Avalanche School is based here. It feels kind of like a legacy event that we talked about in the committee meetings, and something we should support. The number is more than half of the amount that we tried to stick to last year. But it seems like they kind of need a boost from us to make sure that this event, which in 2019 really was incredible and brought a lot of amazing talent to Silverton and people to Silverton, get back on its feet. I think I'd support this too.
Yeah, I support this 100%. The 2019 event was absolutely remarkable. The international influence and knowing the history behind it, it blew me away. I learned a lot. But moreover, it's your 60th birthday. Why not? I mean, come on, we just passed one for love. This is the love of you guys. So I vote yes. I say we do it.
Yeah, I think what we can do to support the Silverton Avalanche School as a nonprofit organization, our community, as a long time nonprofit with a really stellar reputation, and putting on this event. I think I attended last time as well. And actually my students presented, which just put a plug in for them at this stellar event. So yeah, I'm all in favor of doing what we can to support a really important organization. So I'd make a motion to accept the full discounted amount requested for the fee waiver, which is,
Yeah, I want to second that. Absolutely.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
Yes.
trustee George,
Recuse.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes, motion passes. Thank you. And you'll work with
Thanks, guys.
the OEM team to make sure that capacity.
100%. It's fluid. The plan is attached. It's already changed since we wrote it, but I know a guy that's speaking as well. Situation. And we hope you'll all attend. It's gonna be a nice blend of science, but a lot of human stuff. And based upon our last 18 months here, I think it's not only gonna be informative, but like healing for this community. So appreciate it.
And is there the possibility of like a small fee-based virtual attendance option?
If we can get the Zoom to work. Yeah, I'm all for it. Yeah, for sure. I'm just, you could help me with the tech.
I'm not the guy, but.
Perfect.
Our owl works really well. We're gonna leave you in good hands.
Discounted fee.
Thank you, guys.
Maybe he shouldn't talk to me.
All right. So going back now to 4C, assuming that Clark is now settled.
Yes, yes.
This is update on community builder scope and consideration to expand their contract to include master plan.
So while Kelly's pulling up Clark here, I'm just going to give a little introduction. Community Builders, a nonprofit that took on the Compass project through the Brownsfield Partnership grant funding, has been in our community for the last year to facilitate public engagement, providing a vision and strategy for the community. The town was lucky that Brownfield Partnership recommended community builders to work with the town, and a process that usually is a rigorous grant application. But during 2020, the town was accepted without having to go through that grant. So that was pretty cool. Clark is the executive director of Community Builders, met with the master plan committee on August 24th to propose continuing their work in the community to facilitate and complete a master plan with the data and engagement that they already conducted in the community. You can refer to his memo in the packet. Staff would recommend that we continue with the momentum and the relationships that the Compass project has already built and have community builders complete our master plan. We do not recommend going out to bid, and our purchasing policy allows for this type of exception. This is on page 7, number 4, under requirements for formal bids. And it says, in the case when an item is one of a kind or there is little likelihood of competition, the Board of Trustees, unless prohibited by law, upon affirmative vote of majority of the trustees, may waive the requirement of soliciting bids in accordance with the provisions in this policy. Community Builder is not a consultant. They are a nonprofit, so they wouldn't even bid on a proposal, but they're willing to extend their service to include the master plan for less than what a formal bid would likely bring, with the grant funding offsetting that cost. So the total amount for the town would be about $40,000. A typical master plan of this scale could run the town upwards of 70 to 90,000. And I do have Clark on the line here to answer any questions, as well as his associate JJ. Who has facilitated many master plans in many communities and is excited to be here with us.
Hey, guys.
Welcome.
Hello. Well, I suppose, first of all, good to see everybody. And, you know, I don't have too much to build on what was just shared. We can address any questions you guys might have. I think all of you are aware of, you know, what's going on with the Compass project. And, you know, really when we met with the master plan committee, when we were in town for some engagement in August, we were just asking the question, you know, how do we make sure that this work aligns well with the master plan? Because the master plan committee, when we started back in sort of February, January, in February, the master plan committee met and said, if this other process is going to be going and going to be doing some in-depth community engagement, we should really utilize that engagement for the master plan. And so we looked at it that way, and it was time, now that we've, got a summer's worth of engagement under our belts, to step back and sort of ask, okay, well, what do we want that transition to look like? We can speak a little bit more about sort of some of the different ideas that emerged. I tried to speak to those in the memo that I provided, but rather than do that, I'll just see if you guys have any questions. I recognize that some of you are probably more up to speed than others on where we are with the project. So I'm happy to provide a quick snapshot of kind of where we are, just as by way of providing an update, and maybe potentially offer, our thoughts of kind of what changes we'd see to timeline and such. And if it's useful, I do have some project examples that are similar types of work, if that would be at all helpful. At the same time, to Gloria's point, I mean, we're not, we're fine either way, whatever direction you guys want to go on this. The way we work with communities is in a partnership role. And if it makes, we're fine with any direction you guys want to go. I do want to go ahead and introduce JJ on the phone. If we do go forward with the concept that we've outlined, JJ would step in and play a pretty big role helping us. He just brings a lot of experience in master planning with all sorts of different communities around the country, actually. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, go ahead, JJ.
Oh, I was just going to say hello and thank you. As Gloria mentioned, I would be thrilled to work with you on your on your citywide, townwide master plan. As Gloria mentioned, I have worked across the country for the last 25 years as a consultant. Now I'm with Community Builders. I started a few months ago, and probably some of the most relevant plans I've worked on actually with Clark in Rifle, Colorado, Flagstaff, Arizona, just down the road from you, in Durango, downtown Fort Collins, just to name a few, and then many other mountain towns in Montana and Wyoming. So I'd be happy to bring my national experience to Silverton, Colorado.
Thank you. Does the board think it'd be helpful for the public watching or for the board to get a quick update on the Community Builders process so far? Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea, Clark. I think so. When Clark was presenting the similar concept to the master plan committee, it was kind of this context that really, I think, drove the committee's discussion.
Great. I'll go ahead and share my screen then. Let me get.
Check and see if he's okay.
Okay.
Just took that off. I promoted Clark's born.
Share. That's not what I want to share. Although that is a good opportunity to show you guys all of what's coming up. Okay, so that cool. So yeah, I would be remiss, as long as I have some eyes and ears on the screen, if I didn't take a quick moment to just share the word about some cool things happening next week. I promise I'll provide a little bit of an update, but I thought, in the chance that you guys did want some slides, I'd go ahead and toss this in here. Next week, our team will be in town doing some pretty fun engagement for the Compass Project. Monday evening, there will be a fun community workshop with a lot of stations people can go around, and then both a sort of full group and then small breakout group discussions, talking about community change and sort of a pretty cool set of activities. And then we were doing another sort of set of community change discussions on the morning of September 21st. We're doing a walk shop where people can kind of hit the streets with us and show us your favorite parts of town, and just start sharing ideas. There's a different type of experience you have when you're walking around in a place and looking at that place. And so we'd learn a lot from the community that way. And then 2 open house opportunities are set, trying to sort of meet the needs of people who can't make it to the community workshop or any of the other opportunities we have that week. And we're, trying to do one late night for people who might be getting out of the kitchens. So that's on the 21st at Coffee Bear, 8:30 to 10 p.m. And then in the morning on the 22nd at high noon. So just real quick, little plug there. How do I go next? Okay, so just quickly in terms of an overview of the process, a good way to think about this project is we begin in a phase where we're thinking about where we are today. And that's the work that we're doing right now. We started actually with a lot of groundwork and trying to set up the teams and systems and all of that stuff that you need to get going with a project. But over the summer, we've been, and really since, I guess, probably early May, when we first started coming here and things opened up a little bit from a COVID perspective, we've been working on this phase 2. Where are we today? And we've been asking these questions about, what do you love most about your community? What are your hopes and fears for the future? The next stage of the project that we're going to be moving into is more about where we're going. So once we've thought about where we are, how we got there, kind of what some of the key challenges and issues we're facing today are, we'll shift into saying, okay, well, if this is where we are and this is where we're maybe headed under the status quo, where do we actually want to be? Where do we actually want to end up in the future if we were to have control over that? And so we'll begin shaping specific goals to help provide a vision for where the community wants to get to. And then finally, stage 4 is really about coming up with the specific strategies and actions that will carry you forward. How do we get there? This model, as you'll see in a couple minutes, is it's a tailored framework. So we did design this for you guys, but it's a similar framework to what we've used in other communities that are doing visioning, which we don't do all the time. Visioning, where you sort of get into community values and think about truly long-term vision for a community as a whole or a region as a whole, is a big type of work, and it takes a lot of effort, particularly on engagement, because there's just an important level of really reaching out to the whole of the community if you're going to do it right. And that was really a big emphasis when you guys asked us to come in and we started talking to the project management team, which includes staff from the town, county, the San Juan Development and chamber, school district, sort of that collaborative that helped bring us in. And then meeting with the task force, which is a team that's been created to help us with really doing effective engagement and outreach into the community. It really became clear that engaging the community and reaching out to as many people as possible was a really important thing right now with where you guys are as a community and the type of change that you're going through. So this is sort of a high level overview. This is much more specific, and I promise I won't try to make you read that text. This is more of an internal thing for us, but it just intended to kind of give you guys a sense of the project as it's scoped today. So you'll see here, this has us going, with a lot of the bulk of the engagement that we've been doing, June, July, August, over the summer, shifting in the fall towards some new phasing in the project. And then in late fall, early winter into strategies, and then kind of wrapping up the plan in the first half of the winter or first quarter of the winter. This is a sort of a very initial look at extending the project if we were to move forward with this being a project where we actually carry forward into completing a master plan with you guys. So don't memorize this or anything. It's just a very initial look at some changes that would take place. But the most important thing is to note that we'd extend out now beyond February and March into April, May, and June. And we think it's possible to wrap up the project around June. So it would be an extension of the timeline. but not one that's, crazy long. So I think we'd be able to get you guys moving forward. A lot of the heaviest lifting that would come into a project like this is the stuff we're doing right now and into the fall and winter. So, and that's work that we were going to be doing with you guys no matter what, and we'll be doing with you guys no matter what. You can see if you go backwards, no matter what, the plan has been to help you guys identify specific goals and strategies that respond to the values and issues that the community is identifying right now. So, those parts of it don't change. What changes is then folding that into some of the things that you really need in a master plan around sort of coming up with a land use framework and thinking about how does that actually play from a physical planning perspective, and working with you guys on developing the tools that you need for that. In terms of, these are mostly in the memo, sort of a simplified version here. We think you'd be able to continue with the existing structure, teams, and process. We think we'd be looking together at an extended timeline to June 2021. We think, both in general, but also just what we're learning from the community. One kind of cool thing about doing this is that there'd just be more space and time to incorporate more learning opportunities and dialogue. You guys are going through a lot and so many different types of change and so many kind of classic questions around sort of what type of community do we want to become, that creating the space to learn about what other communities have done in those types of situations, and what are the resources for example, tackling housing challenges or what have you. What are the different things we can do to build a less cyclical economy or less seasonal economy, the different types of things that we're hearing over and over in the engagement that we've been doing. There's more space to actually create some learning opportunities to respond to that. So that's probably a pretty good thing. Again, as I mentioned, there'd be an expanded emphasis on sort of physical planning, because one of the things you want in a master plan is you really do want it to not only provide vision for where the community is going, but it needs to be a tool that helps inform your capital investment, your local policies, your zoning, all of that stuff. So, you do want to have the sort of tools that you need that you can really only get at by kind of looking physically at the community and thinking, okay, where are the different places that growth or different types of development are going to occur, and what does the community want that to look like, and how do we accomplish that? What other types of amenities or what have you do we want to see? I already mentioned JJ. You guys will like him. He's awesome. And, we'd need probably a minimal level of technical support just to, assist us on a couple different elements when we get further along. Not major. We could probably do the whole thing in-house, but we got a couple partners that are pretty good on like some graphic design and things like that could just be helpful. So that would be incorporated within the budget, but it's all covered within the numbers that are shared in the memo I provided. I think it's useful just to talk a little bit about what working with community builders looks like. This is, on the one hand, it's just a shameless opportunity to provide a picture of my daughter. But it's also, sorry, some background noise there. So we're not a consultant, as Gloria mentioned, and our model is unique. I think, as was mentioned in the introduction, normally communities that work with us go through, it's actually a competitive process, and you apply, there's other communities that apply. We go through and try to identify the communities that have the greatest potential, the greatest need. We talk through that with the community. We kind of scope things out, and we end up working with the places that seem like we can have the greatest opportunity as a nonprofit to have an impact and really assist that place. In this case, we started working with you guys through our relationship to you on a brownfields workshop that happened, almost 2 years ago. And through the state's brownfields partnership, which allows us some funding to help communities, but normally not at this level. So they've been really generous to enable us to sort of do a deeper level of assistance to you guys. So it's opened this door, but ultimately as a nonprofit, we do like to sustain or maintain this type of relationship where it's a partnership and we're not coming in as a consultant. And there's a few things that are really important. That one is, we try to really combine our funds that we raise philanthropically with partnership funds, which is, local funding. And there's a lot of different ways that can be created. But the point is that both as partners, we've both got skin in the game, and we think that's important. So that's reflected in the memo that I sent. I've already made the point about not being a typical consulting relationship. One of the things that we really emphasize that is also just not normal within a typical consulting relationship is that we don't feel like we're successful if we just get you a good product at the end. To us, part of what's important is that, as a community, you guys are able to do some of the things that we're going to work on together a little better when we're gone. And you'll, as a community, you will have, greater capacity for tackling some of these issues. Maybe some of the engagement work that we do are things that you'll pick up. So that's an important component, is just sort of strengthening local capacity and civic health. And so that's just who we are and part of how we work. This will require, and I know this is a challenge because you guys are just like many small towns, local staff capacity is such a challenge, but we will need really, some level of ongoing coordination and support from, staff. It's just really important. We can't lose that touch. And similarly, but certainly not as ongoing, we do need to have consistent engagement and coordination with, the actual local jurisdiction that we're partnering with and officials, which is you guys. I'll just keep going if that's okay. And I'd just say jump in if anybody has any questions, or we can come back to it. Let me just quickly share a couple project examples. I tried to slim these down to make them really kind of consistent. I took out one that's sort of our original kind of visioning project that was actually a regional visioning effort we did in Gunnison County that was very successful and involved a very similar framework to what you guys have. But I pulled it out because it was regional, and I wanted to offer you guys some examples of smaller scale master plan type work. So this is a project we did in Grand Junction. It was, again, through our partnership process. So they applied for help and they wanted to create a downtown plan. And we worked with them to design a process. And again, you can see some similarities between the process that you guys are doing and what this was. And a lot of engagement, not quite as, actually not as much as we're doing with you guys, but there's a lot of engagement. But the process was very, very tactical in the sense that it was really focused on identifying opportunities that the downtown partnership and the city could make around transportation, placemaking. They were really interested in some catalytic sort of infill opportunities within their downtown. They're trying to sort of make connections between their downtown core, which is a really cool place if you've ever been to that kind of Main Street, and their riverfront, where they've been trying to sort of really connect the community to the river for a long time. And they've got some really enterprising kind of visionary businesses that are trying to start something down there that's pretty unique. And they've got a new park down there, Las Colonias Park. So the project was really focused around that. The things to kind of notice here is that, while the project starts with a lot of conceptual ideas and vision, it's rooted in specific strategies and actions. And these, tables you see over here on the right are sections from the action plan that just are intended to sort of show a real need to sort of, in a detailed level, get at who's going to be doing what are the resources, what's the level of priority, so on and so forth. Here's a leftover slide from the one we did in Gunnison, but I think that's it. Now, this was actually a City of Gunnison project. This actually came out of the regional work we did in Gunnison County. They had a really rough go trying to do a downtown sort of transportation strategy. They were interested in bike and pedestrian access and connectivity, and the process kind of flopped and everybody got mad, and a lot of the businesses were mad, and a lot of the citizens were mad, and everybody was mad at each other. And so they asked us to come in, and the very next summer we were back in there, and it was already, it was already kind of hostile and hot. And so a lot of the emphasis early on was just in building relationships and repairing relationships and creating leaders out of the businesses who had felt completely left out of the Laos process. And that was really a lot of their concern, is that you came up with this big plan and you didn't even talk to us. And so we started with them. We said, you guys are going to lead this thing. And so we worked with that business community and really turned them into the leads that were responsible for doing engagement and helping us do effective engagement. So it's actually really similar to the task force role that we have in this project, and put the responsibility on them of helping us do an effective job of engagement. Turned out to be really successful. They've had a lot of progress and success coming out of this. I think I actually do have it. Yeah, here's some projects that are coming out of the ground right now. Some bike connections that are coming in, connecting the university to the downtown. This is a really cool park down here below that is just really kind of fun, cool little placemaking project they're doing. They really wanted more places for people to be downtown. So you can see down here on the right, they're in the middle of constructing that actually this month. So pretty cool. We finished that probably 3 or 4 years ago. And it's just been fun to see little bits and pieces of it kind of popping out of the ground. Finally, I'll just mention a project in Taos we did. This is called Strong at Heart. Taos pulled us in because there's just terrible relationships between the town and the community didn't trust the town. And the community was also pretty divisive internally, and they were going through a lot of change. And some of it was really difficult change, like difficult demographic change, where parts of the community were starting to go away and lose in a way that was changing the sense of place, and people feeling like we're losing our soul. And one thing that they all cared about, though, was the downtown, because it had for so long been kind of core to the community and who and what it was. And so this was really about, how do we create a downtown for everyone? It was very robust in terms of community engagement and trying to go out into the community and reach as many people as possible. And it was pretty fun. We tried to really take a lot of the engagement to the streets too. We partnered with the local community college to build these awesome little street demonstrations and have a potluck out on the streets, and just pretty fun stuff. So pretty heavy engagement. And here again, it identified some really specific projects. It's pretty tactical as well in terms of specific projects for the downtown. Some of those, again, we worked with the community college to sort of do example installations of what it could look like. And so pretty fun stuff. So I'll just stop there. Those are a couple examples of projects that I think are relevant in terms of the type of master planning that you guys will probably want as a community, not because the guts or content of that is what you would want at all. That's what their communities wanted. It's that commitment to engagement and just that, really bringing the community together to identify what that future would look like. So I'll stop there and see if you guys have any questions or ideas. We're only seeing darkness. I don't know if we lost you guys. There you are. I was like, they hung up on me.
There's a lot of enthusiasm around what you guys are doing, Clark, in the community. And I know after the last master planning committee meeting, there were a lot of people who came out of that really jazzed about the direction and about the outreach and the level of engagement that we have going in the community. And so I think that, to just push it forward on the agenda item, I think there's a tremendous value in having you guys kind of stick around with us and leverage that time investment that you've already put in and the level of understanding that you've created with the community and with community members kind of among just knowing you, Clark, and knowing your team and leveraging that for an outcome that I think is like, it's hard to put a value on, I think, that time investment that's already in. So I think that looking at this in a broader scope and over, you know, pushing out farther on the spreadsheet sounds like a really important move for the community. Off the cuff. That's my thought.
Any other thoughts from you guys, concerns or questions about kind of what it's like working with us or anything like that?
No, I know that finishing the master plan was one of our priorities when we were just at our retreat the other day, and having the data and like the outreach you've already done and the time you've already put in, it seems like a good fit to me. And I know that the staff is pretty excited about continuing to work with you. So yeah, I'm in support of this.
Jess, if I could put you on the spot, you've have the most tenure in working with the master plan and being on the planning commission, working with the master plan. I think everybody'd love to hear your thoughts on this too.
Well, this is a completely different direction than the way we've attacked the master plan in the past. And I think a lot of it was due to the fact that we didn't really have the resources to procure an organization like this. And now that we're in a little different situation financially, it only made sense that we go out and try to get a little bit more professional product. So just like I said, when we had the community builders at the master planning committee meeting, you know, I'm excited to move forward with these guys, and I'm excited to see what they can do with the community. I'm really interested in what the other trustees feel about it and what they've seen tonight, more than myself, though.
No, I'm also in support of it. I think it'd be a good step towards hitting the goal that we set at our trustee retreat. Or steps we can take towards fulfilling those goals.
When we first started and we were looking at the master plan, the 2010 master plan, and thinking about how to tackle it, and the master plan committee was formed, the kind of DOLA guidance we received in the comp plan 101 training, and then additional DOLA input, they were telling us like best case scenario after public engagement, we were looking at like a 12 to 18 month time frame for a reasonable expectation, possibly even 24 months. The prices that they told us to expect were significantly greater than this price. And so the path that the master plan committee started taking was through public engagement, looking at other towns' plans, trying to figure out what the process even might look like. And fortuitously around the same time, community builders came into Silverton and started doing work, and the committee decided to just defer entirely to community builders in terms of public engagement. And then the plan became to just kind of shadow, watch, and then take in all of the information community builders gathered so that we could find some type of unknown consultant in the future that might do the work that Clark's proposing to do. And then it kind of was like this aha moment, it felt like, for the master plan committee, that we didn't have to go through the process of identifying an entity or consultant that would be a good fit for this community, and then figure out how to transition all of the information and trust that community builders has gathered and created to some other entity. And that just seemed like that for me, that's like the link, that if we tried to transition from community builders and take the information and context they've gathered and then find somebody else that can run with it, most likely it seems that entity is going to want to redo a lot of stuff they've already done. We're going to have just engagement fatigue from the community. It's like, didn't we just have all these meetings? Haven't we done all the surveys? So for me, it seems like not only do we not have to do a ton of extra work, but these guys have been through the ringer already, working with us through COVID and then into the, like, back to kind of normalcy. I know that there's been, friction that's been resolved, which is a really cool thing to see with any group of people in this community. And it just feels like the best possible opportunity for us to benefit from and come up with a plan that reflects the whole community. And to have it done by June of 22 just seems like a unreasonable wish list item coming true. So if that is possible, we won't hold you to it. I know you said those were kind of just rough estimates, but anything within that time frame is still a year ahead of what we expected.
Yeah, it's great. I think on the time frame question, that's JJ and I's thinking, looking at it and feeling like the sort of glide path we have you guys on is really what it was cool, because when we looked at it, it's not like, well, now we got to reconfigure things. It's very in line that's why I wanted to share those projects, is because they're really similar frameworks. We design the process differently every time, but the framework, the structure is often, kind of similar. And, I think that it's a good one to get you guys where you want to go. It'll be interesting. I think we'll want to see, especially with, the sort of ongoing intermittent COVID challenges and the real dynamics around summer's been really hard to do engagement. We've come every month, and it's been a lot of time that's sometimes they've been really productive, and sometimes we haven't had a lot of, enough engagement as I would have liked, because I have usually pretty high standards for us in terms of what we're able to get done in those. And so I'm just realizing, it's going to take what it's going to take, and we have to help you guys get there. We think June's a reasonable target, though. And if we need to sort of push it out, we're not going to wait till May to bring that up. I think we'll be able to tell you guys much earlier, because we want to plan for ourselves too, and we really like to kind of know what we're doing. I can tell you that while we were pretty open to either option, I, as a leader of an organization who's choosing to spend resources in a community now, I like the idea of it makes me nervous too, what was mentioned in terms of like this handoff, because we could do some really great work, and who knows what a consultant might do to pick up. And I would hate for you guys to have the confusion of two good plans and which one is the real plan. And I just don't think that that's really what you guys need. And so while I don't want to sit here on the computer and sort of try to pitch this to you guys, because that's not really where we are. I do really like working with your community. I think you guys are in a really interesting spot. So we find the challenges you're working on really interesting, and we're excited by that. And I think it's, from an organizational perspective, we think it's healthier to have something go all the way through rather than a handoff that might be confusing for the community and less reliable in terms of how it could land for us, because then we're like, well, hopefully this investment works, whereas we feel more confident in the partnership if it goes all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I
agreed.
just ask a question?
Please.
This is something we didn't talk about, Clark, but it just came to mind as far as our match and the 40,000 going into it. Is that something that you would want in this fiscal year, or is that something we could budget for in our 2022?
I can work with you on that. It's really, and we could break it into a couple chunks. I mean, yeah, it's we're chill on that.
Great answer. Thanks.
So I know this just said suggestions in the memo to move forward. Do we need to make a motion on this?
Well, so what we don't have is like a updated proposal. And I know that we have the budget amount, but I think what we need is just that document that says exactly
Like a
what the
contract?
increased scope is, yeah,
Okay.
for us to then consider for approval. But it sounds like the direction from the board is to move forward with putting that together.
Okay. I will work with Clark on a contract for their future services on putting together a master plan. Does that sound like a plan?
And for a plan.
Sounds great.
Good deal. Well, thanks you guys.
No, thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
I look forward to meeting you all next week.
Oh yeah. Tell your peoples like
We'll be there.
we'll be there. It's gonna be awesome.
Gonna be fun.
Bye-bye.
All right. Good night. Thank you.
That's exciting.
Great.
And I think Lisa Darrell will probably be pretty excited as well.
I mean, they said it was going to be fun. That's a great sign.
All right, moving on to 4K, public hearing, use subject to review application, proposed Simmons duplex lots 11 and 12, block 63, 7th and Mineral Streets, Silverton.
And Kelly invited Marty to review the public hearing protocol for us, as it's been a while since we have conducted one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty.
Sure. So keep in mind in a public hearing that this is a quasi adjudicative action in deciding on this permit. So you will want to base your decision on the materials that are in your packet, as well as any information or materials that are presented this evening. You want to try and avoid basing your decision on information that's outside of those resources. Typically, the staff will initiate the presentation and go first, and then the applicant, you can ask staff questions, and then the applicant would have an opportunity to make a presentation. You ask the applicant any questions that you may have, and then take public comment, and then following public comment, you would close the public comment period of the hearing and enter into deliberations. Before you deliberate, but after public comment, if you have additional questions, you can ask those questions of staff or the applicant. Many communities then also give the applicant a chance to rebut or respond to the public comments in general. So do you have other questions about how public hearings are run?
So staff presentation, public comment, applicant rebuttal. So, sorry.
Staff presentation, questions for staff, applicant has the opportunity to make a presentation.
Got it.
Questions of applicant, then public comment. Then applicant would get a chance to respond to any of those comments. You can then ask any additional questions that have been raised in public comments of staff or of the applicant. Then you close the public comment period of the public hearing and move into deliberations and a decision.
Thank you. Any other questions before we have staff initiate the presentation?
No.
Okay. Over to you, Lisa.
As Marty stated, this is a public hearing. So before making a decision, the board should consider comments from the applicants and any citizens. Mr. and Mrs. Simmons are proposing to build a secondary dwelling unit, long-term rental apartment at their new residence. This is a use subject to review application. The town board can conditionally approve or deny the application. The site is located at 7th and Mineral in the Economic Development ED zone, which was originally intended for light industrial use. There's no known adjacent landowner opposition. The planning department and the planning commission recommends conditional approval with the 5 conditions that are in your staff report.
Do you have any Q&A for Lisa?
No.
So we're feeling like the presentation and packet were pretty straightforward.
Her packet, as usual, was very comprehensive.
Okay. Do we have the applicant on the Zoom?
Clark Thornhill here, planning assistant to the planning director. The applicant's not on the Zoom call. They're in Europe and it's like 5 a.m. where they are. So they're just going to have to wait and see our meeting minutes from this meeting.
Thank you, Clark. So the applicant, by not being here, is waiving their moment to shine. So if we don't have any staff Q&A and we don't have any questions for the applicant because the applicant's unavailable, we would go to public comment.
Correct.
So at this time, anyone in the room have any comments on this use subject to review application? Okay. If you're on Zoom and you click the raise hand button, now would be the time to make a public comment relating to this use subject to review application.
I have none.
All right, so we have no public comment. We don't have the applicant, so there's no reason to have the applicant rebuttal step. So at this time, we will close public comment and move on to deliberations.
I think one of the biggest things that the planning commission wanted the town board to discuss is whether or not this is an area that's fit for zoning changes. This is the third structure, residential structure we've seen in the block, and 2 of those are duplexes. So this is a section of the ED that's really not being utilized for any sort of commercial or light industry. It seems that it's trending towards more residential use.
Yeah.
Maybe something to send on to the code committee or zoning committee.
For the code, their single family dwellings are neither prohibited, but they're not allowed either, right? So it's sort of just it's not like we're changing the zoning. It's just we haven't made a clear stance on
right.
Whether they're allowed or not. They're neither prohibited nor allowed, right? Is that what
As the code reads for the ED.
Yeah. But given that, I mean,
it's behaving more like a R2
right
section of town now.
Are we going to run into problems later when somebody does use it for ED and
We just did.
Resident.
Yeah, it sets us up potentially for
Yeah.
problems.
It's just, yeah,
Or by we, the town just did.
yeah.
So Jess, what's the procedure on? Like, is that your recommendation that it goes to the zoning committee to take a look at that area? Because obviously we're not planners, so.
No, that's the planning commission's recommendation.
Yeah, from the planning commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just an area of town that they've noticed that it's not really behaving as it's zoned, and
Mhm.
maybe something that we want to look at changing the zoning.
Mhm.
So that we can avoid a conflict further on down the road if we do end up with somebody who wants to do some sort of light
Right.
commercial or construction or something, a welding shop in the middle of a residential
Technically,
neighborhood.
that's what it is down there.
Well, that's what it's turning into.
Yeah.
And if that's how it's going to be developed, are we going to want to have a public hearing for every single one that comes to us?
Would we have to, and we would notice current property owners, obviously, if there was going to be a zoning change to the property they own that they built on and. would
Well,
that be-
there's a whole laundry list of things that go along with zoning changes, but that I'm not entirely aware of. Clark's got his hand up.
Hey, I just want to let you know that these lots were advertised as R2 multifamily, just on the real estate listing. But we do have another planning commission agenda item coming up in September for another duplex, just like this, actually on lot 1314.
Marty?
Yeah, look, I think you need to be careful about a couple of things. As I say, bringing in information that's not part of the packet, but keep in mind that your agenda item has to do with a specific application tonight as opposed to a rezoning.
Thank you.
Well, since, I mean, the planning commission has given us the suggestion to approve it with conditions and.
Staff is approved.
Yeah, I think that. Given the information in Lisa's packet, we should conditionally approve this. So I would make a motion to conditionally approve the proposed Simmons duplex.
I'll second your motion.
Any further discussion before we roll call? I'd just like to note that this is in line with increasing housing density without degrading like an R1 neighborhood or an R1A. And so it seems aligned with the direction that we've been asked to pursue in creating more housing in Silverton. Roll call?
I'm all for it. Oh, yeah. I'm all about this.
Roll call.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Birma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Congratulations to the Simmons when they watch this YouTube video. Lisa?
We do have a code rewrite coming up at the end of this year, beginning of next year. So we will be proposing some changes to the individual districts such as ED zone. I think it was late 2019, I did suggest the block 63 be rezoned as R2, but it had already been sold off to individual lot owners. And across from this is R2, but it's turning into a residential zone, like you mentioned. And in between some of these houses, we could have industrial uses, including marijuana facility or impound lot or wrenching type of business. And so it would be a good example of places where we might want to consider rezoning.
Thank you. Marty, is there anything we need to do to conclude the public hearing other than having taken the roll call and vote?
You took the roll call vote, and so that would end the public hearing, and you can simply close the public hearing.
Thank you. The public hearing is closed. All right, so we're moving on to approval of consent agenda items.
No one's got anything. I'll make a motion to approve.
I just wanted to ask if it was helpful for you guys to have the listing of what the higher amounts were on the check register.
That was awesome.
Thank you. I made a note of that, actually. Yes, that was very helpful. Great idea.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Trustee Harper,
Yes.
trustee Wager,
Yes.
trustee Bearma,
Yes.
trustee George,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Barney,
Yes.
Mayor Furman.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. Staff reports.
Sure. I just want to highlight a couple things. So we have a joint meeting with the county on September 27th at 5:30 PM, right before our regularly scheduled meeting to talk about our joint budget. Then I have completed the employee evaluations with staff. So we did a 360 evaluation. And now we are all moving into budget together. So town staff has also created an affordable housing task force. We meet weekly to discuss projects and progress addressing affordable housing. I needed help and Lisa needed help, and so we all got together. Todd included a significant events debrief in his staff report that I would like to highlight. And then our audit was conducted today, and we should have a report in about a month or so. So those are kind of the big highlights from the staff report. I also wanted to highlight our trustee goals that we decided on in our workshop on September 9th, when we met for, gosh, I realized it was a long day, 8 to 6 PM. But I thank you all for sitting in those really uncomfortable seats and dealing with the tech issues that we did have. But what came out of it is just wonderful. So the goals are in areas of affordable housing, deferred maintenance, and completing a master plan and supporting staff retention, hiring, and succession planning. So we outlined them in a question answer way. So I thought it might be fun if I were to ask you the questions, and I have the goals written down so you don't have to memorize them. But if I ask you the question and you might answer it.
There you go. Well, there's only, okay, sure. Happy to do it.
So what is the town of Silverton doing about affordable housing?
Well, trustees intend to work towards the town breaking ground on an affordable housing project by December 31st, 2022.
Excellent. So that is our first goal. The second goal, how is the town of Silverton going to reinvest in the community?
The trustees are committed to addressing the deferred maintenance of our current assets and resources, including revitalizing Blair Street, Mullis Lake, and Kendall Mountain Recreation Area, to name a few.
Does this town of Silverton have a plan?
Yes. As you heard this evening, you're helping us create a master plan through participating in our community visioning and Compass project activities.
And the town has a lot to do. How will you accomplish all this?
The trustees are committed to supporting the administrator to retain current staff, hire the necessary staff to support the town's needs, and create succession plans for key roles.
Thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thought it might be more fun as a back and forth, because it was made for a conversation. And so thank you all for those goals for the next year. I would also like to remind everyone that we have a workshop meeting next Monday, September 24th at 7 PM to set my goals, the administrator goals. And we also have a finance committee meeting that morning at 9 AM.
What time is your goals meeting?
7 PM,
On,
September 24th.
I have that as the 20th.
Monday.
I have it as the 20th as well.
Is it the 20th? Monday, the 20th? It is the 20th.
Cool.
It's Monday, the 20th. Why did I get? Okay. That's all I have for you.
Thank you. Any trustee questions for staff? I thought that the event debriefs were super helpful. And I hope that we're so organized that we can utilize the debriefs as we plan for those events in a year. All right, if there's nothing else for staff reports, we can move on to committee reports. And something that Gloria suggested is she's going to keep track of committee meetings and add them to the agenda so that we can skip the awkward moment of trying to make sure that we remember every single meeting that we had. That'll be something that'll be in the agenda going forward. And so the only meeting that we're aware of since our last meeting was the master plan committee meeting. We actually covered like 99.9% of what we talked about through Clark's presentation earlier. I would just add that we had an interesting conversation about like what success looks like for this process, as well as what success doesn't look like. And the examples of what it doesn't look like is like coming up with a non-actionable plan or a plan that doesn't have widespread community buy-in, or kind of tears apart existing plans rather than brings together existing plans that we've already spent a lot of time and resources as a community putting together. That's all I had from to add on to what we already talked about. Okay, unless there are any other committee meetings that weren't listed in this version. Okay, so moving on to trustee reports.
Well, we touched on it. We had our retreat. It was great. Thanks, Gloria, for the food and the hospitality and the tech support and the logistical.
My pleasure.
Efforts there.
And also a big thank you to Nancy Brockman for volunteering her time and resources to put together the first half of the day, as well as supporting the whole second half of the day. She was there for the entire duration as well, which was a brutally long day, but productive. And productive.
And yeah. It was good to come out of there. We had a bunch of things that we thought were priorities. We thought we'd listen to the voices in town that we hear a lot from, and we focused on those. And I feel like we accomplished, or at least moving forward to accomplishing one of those after meeting with the community builders tonight. So, and thanks again for setting that up. I think that was really important, and glad we did it.
Right, and I would say we came to those conclusions around the goals with a lot of agreement and collaborative spirit.
Go team. Anything else in trustee reports? All right. Moving on to continued business, affordable housing. We have a very helpful and significant step forward housing needs assessment report in our packet.
Sure. Would you mind to see, oh, yep, there's Heidi. Excellent. So just a reminder that this was an extension of a grant that was facilitated through the Southwest Colorado Council of Governments to help us provide our own housing needs as they were doing a regional study. We were able to get a localized study as well. So thank you for that, Heidi. And you'll find the completed housing assessment study in your packet. And that can also be found online for our people that are listening. Heidi, welcome. Thanks for staying up with us.
You bet. Hello, everyone. What I thought I would just do, since it's so late, is I can go ahead and share my screen, and for the public who's viewing, as well as the trustees, just walk you through some of the more significant parts of the report, and then mostly take your questions. So let me just make sure that I've got the ability to do that. You should see the needs assessment there on the screen. This needs assessment covered both Silverton and San Juan County. And I'm just going to go just page through and touch on the most significant pieces. This is about a 20-page report. I would note this is part of a regional report, as Gloria mentioned. And so as part of the development of the regional report, we developed a data dashboard that has the ability, and I'm presenting that to the Southwest COG board this Thursday. And so we'll be rolling that out this week. It has the ability for you to compare both the county and the town to other counties and municipalities within the region. So it's a pretty cool interactive tool. Starting with demographic changes, and really the demographics didn't change a whole lot. We did a little graphic here that looks at typical demographic changes, both in terms of race, ethnicity, household composition, disability, age, as well as poverty. And the most significant fluctuation was a really big reduction in your poverty rate, as well as growth in your senior population. We also take a look at how income distributions have shifted. This gives us a lot of information about who can continue to live in a community if people are being displaced, how incomes are changing overall. And this figure 2 shows you the shifts in the income distribution. This is for Silverton. The county is on the next page. But you see a decline in incomes for people earning less than, or with incomes less than $75,000 a year, and an increase in wealthier households. So those with incomes of more than 100,000, that increase is more significant when we look at the county. We also took a look at inflows and outflows. These are commuting data that come out of the special data source that the census puts out. Your increase, most significant increase was in commuters. So compared to 2010, there are 77 more workers who commute out. And this is based on looking at people who come in, people who come out, and people who have been able to both work and live in the county. This is only available at a county level. The other thing that I just want to note here, I can show you this on the screen, is when we looked at changes between 2010 and 2018, we took a look at how many housing units that the county, and mostly these were in the town, had permitted. It was about 25, but not all of those actually turned into units because you've got such a significant challenge with getting things built based on the lack of both labor, increases in supply, and really just human power in the construction industry. You gained, though, comparatively a little more than 100 jobs, but lost 55 housing units. Those units converted from use by permanent residents to use of seasonal and vacational occupants. So altogether, when we look at all these dynamics together, it makes sense why your in-commuting increased. And Gloria helped us Gloria and Beth both helped us put this together, a really great survey of your employers. It was a confidential survey. We did ask about the industries that were represented by those participants, but we didn't actually have their names. So we asked a lot about needs, a lot about challenges in maintaining and recruiting workforce, as well as things like what you see here on figure 6. When your employees can't find housing, what do they do? And you see the top answers here are camp, live in housing in poor conditions, and then secondarily, tolerate a long commute, which we saw earlier with the commute data, live with family or get more roommates and live in overcrowded, overcrowded conditions. We also asked them to, and this was aggregated by both part-time, full-time, as well as seasonal or sort of surge employment demand, how many jobs they have that are unfilled. As I mentioned earlier, difficulty in retaining and recruiting employees. And then we asked about employment needs in the next 5 and 10 years. So in terms of the number of unfilled jobs by type, most of these are low-wage jobs, but really in your core industries, restaurants, hotel workers. 23 was the aggregate count there, an additional 7 with housekeeping, 3 teachers' assistants, 2 retail, 1 lodging management, and 1 education and science. When we asked, and I would mention here that these are generally jobs that a worker, a single person trying to afford an apartment on their own, would need a unit priced at $625 a month and less, and that's with utilities. Or if there are 2 people living together, they could afford $1,250 per month. When we asked about the number of workers who have declined offers because of housing, that number was 50. And then this graphic here on figure 8 in terms of employment needs for the next 5 and 10 years. Your economy's done really well in the last couple of years, and I would say your employers are very excited and very have very optimistic projections about their growth and how many people they would like to employ to accommodate that growth. They projected 80 full-time jobs that they could provide in the next 5 years, 53, additional 53 over 10 years. Part-time and overflow were much smaller, but I really can't overstate the significance of this when you think about the number of units that you've been able to permit, the small number of units that are developed and have been developed and are for sale relative to how employers want to grow. I'm going to shift a bit and talk about housing market trends and what things look like in terms of needs. I do want to, especially since you had a discussion just a moment ago on permitting different types of uses, and I will say I'm a former member of the Denver Planning Board, so I've sat in that seat for the last few years also. You're not unusual in terms of your distribution of housing types relative to the state overall. We are a state that heavily favors single-family detached units, even though our demographics are changing very rapidly to suggest that we might need to think more intentionally about different types of housing. When we've done some work, our firm's done some work on statewide looking at cost burden by unit type. And it is true that both owners and renters who live in attached housing types, so these are duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, up to like an 8plex, they tend to find more affordable housing in those products, and they tend to be less cost burden. You don't have, actually one of a little surprise here, a whole lot of mobile homes in either the town or the county. Those tend to be a relief valve in many of our rural parts of the state. We looked at the distribution of housing by bedroom. Most of your housing units are pretty large, actually, and that certainly is related to the predominance of single-family detached homes. Not a surprise that you have very old housing stock and you have very, very few vacancies in town. We look at housing vacancies, and this is something to make sure when you're looking at the data that you're very cognizant of. So when you look at vacancy data overall, in the rural resort areas in the state of Colorado, our vacancies are really high. And that is because of the number of units that are reserved or vacant units that are classified as seasonal or vacation use. And that's a lot of the units in both the town and in the county. So your vacancy rate in the town is slightly lower than what we saw in 2010, but not a lot. In the counties, it's just a little bit higher. Roughly half, a little more than half of your units are vacant, and that's because it's not because they're available for rent or for purchase, but because they're being used for vacational or second home use. Cost here, I just want to highlight the shifts that we've seen over the last 10 years in the rental distribution. So this here shows units that were priced by price range, rental units by price range. And it may surprise people to know that in 2010, we had 39 units priced between $350 and $500 a month. And that would include utilities. Another 61 between 500 and 750, or sorry, 800. And really there are very, very few right now in that price range. That is rents that are reported by the people who are occupying the units, so the renter households that are occupying those units. So if there is a subsidy attached to that unit, for example, if somebody has a housing choice voucher, that would be reflected in that data. So this is what people are paying. Big shift in what people are paying relative to what they were 10 years ago. I also just wanted to make a note of how things have shifted in terms of for sale units. We were able to obtain for La Plata County and for San Juan County data from what's called the multiple listing service. So data that are on units that are listed that have been sold or are actively for sale, both for San Juan County and for La Plata County. And you'll see here in this first figure 16, a pretty dramatic shift, particularly with houses that are priced $750,000 and more. So if you draw your attention to this right here, just in 2018, 58% of your units were priced at less than $250,000. That has dropped to 30%. Not as much of a shift in the 250 to 525, but when we look at the offset here, there were, at least in the MLS, no units reported for sale over $750,000 a year until 2021. So this is a very recent, very rapid increase. This graphic here just shows the distribution of units that are currently active in the market. And, oh, sorry, that's the wrong arrow. You only have 9 active as of July 2021. So the 9 that were for sale on that date. So when we put all of this together, we developed a housing model for every county in the region and for you, of course. And that model takes into account growth in new jobs, employment projections. It also takes into account non-worker demand. And this is an area that we feel as a firm in planning exercises maybe doesn't get enough attention because it's been such a significant part of our housing stock conversion over the last 5 years. So we took a look at employment growth, resident growth, as well as seasonal and vacation unit growth to determine how many units do you need to think about permitting and constructing over the next 3 to 5 years. So we classified this as short-term and long-term demand. Before I get into that, I do want to talk, or after I talk about the numbers, I want to talk a little bit about employer perceptions because I want to give some attention to all those folks who offered some recommendations for how to meet needs. But when we put together that model, and I would say this is a pretty conservative estimate, so we took into account the capacity that we feel like you all have, both in terms of the number of active builders in your community in the short construction season. In the next 3 years, we think at minimum the town and the county need 22 new units for permanent residents. And then I would recommend a surge capacity solution. You have a significant number of workers who come for winter season or for summer season. Your number for summer season is a bit larger than the number for winter season. And I believe you need to think more intentionally about providing and accommodating that surge. When we broke those down by price point, our recommendation is about 13 of those units are affordable for sale units priced under $525. 4 would be what were called deeply affordable rentals with rents of $625 per month and less. 5 units would be a shared 2 to 3 bedroom market rate rental with a rent of less than $1,750 per month. And then 14 of these is a surge capacity idea. So something that's more permanent than a campground, potentially a tiny home community, a dormitory style housing community for that surge capacity. So last but not least, I do want to touch on employers' perceptions and what they told us. Maybe not a surprise, particularly those of you who employ staff and are trying to find housing for them. Very difficult when we asked what their perception was of trying to house employees. A lot had comments about the impacts of short-term rentals. So these would be open-ended comments that came through the survey, as well as we interviewed for the region a number of stakeholders, including employers. Just a couple of things that I wanted to call out is this acknowledgement that there is, no housing. And so it reminds me, we've done a lot of work in the Bay Area in California, a situation where you can't expect to come to the community and look for a rental or something to buy if you are a new employer. It's really a game of getting into the network of who's going to be leaving. Can I occupy that unit or that bedroom? Can I couch surf for a while before I find a place to live permanently? What types of solutions can I find that are non-traditional solutions to get into a unit right away, and then hope that that turns into some kind of a permanent unit over time. And so, with that, I don't know that there's a whole lot. I would just recommend that you spend a lot of time, looking at the stakeholder perceptions, because I think there's a lot of good information here. People took a lot of time offering that information. It was a very rich survey. To end with, I just wanted to offer our recommendations. I did a preliminary presentation a couple of months ago, maybe just a month ago, where I talked through our preliminary recommendations, and I wanted to solidify those today. One is this idea of a temporary housing village. So, thinking really hard about that intentional seasonal overflow housing. The other one I wanted to touch on is thinking a lot about zoning and land use, which you just did a few minutes ago. It sounds like you are preparing for a code update, and it would be very appropriate for that code update to consider this report and take a look at alternative types of housing. So I did mention earlier that duplex, triplex, fourplex product, if it has the right controls that can achieve affordability, can be a really nice solution both for ownership as well as rental. And what I mean by that is Austin, Texas has been successful in that regard. They offer by right acceptance of up to an 8-plex if a certain percentage of those units are deemed affordable. And they've also got some other conditions associated with that. So the one caution here is, in a community like yours where there's so much demand, I would be I don't think if you just build units that will automatically convert to affordable housing, because there's so much vacation and seasonal ownership demand. You need to attach some conditions to that increased density, that value add that somebody would get, so that there is an affordability return from those units. Incentivizing property owners to rent long-term. For this recommendation here, I looked to a study that was done by a very strong consultant that the Northwest COG hired and who we're quite familiar with and quite friendly with. They did a survey in, I think it was 5 county areas, not including your 5-county region, of residents, and that included people who were part-time residents, vacation owners. Part of what they asked about is people's intention to rent long-term or to convert their seasonal use or second home use into a long-term rental. And I would say what they found is that intention is very low. So there aren't a lot of people who say that they would change to renting to a long-term rental. Which, some programs have been put in place. Summit County had a pretty successful program to try and encourage people to at least keep their units or maybe convert seasonal units to a long-term rental. You have to make it really easy for folks to do that. The truth is there's just so much money to be made right now in vacation and temporary rentals that it's really hard economically to convince folks. However, I do think that you have an opportunity for people who are currently renting units long-term long-term to keep those units in a long-term status. So that can be done through, assisting tenants becoming good tenants with first and last month rent, supporting property management functions. Is a program that Summit County has run and that the state of Colorado is looking at potentially providing funding for. So keep an eye on that. Other recommendations here, continuing making use of town-owned town-owned properties or lands, converting those into affordable housing. You've done a really good job of that in the past, building out that Anvil site into affordable units and then continuing that type of investment. And then last but not least, looking at alternative housing finance solutions. There was an August workshop that Gloria and Beth and others sponsored that brought in people from around the region to talk about challenges, and financing came up a lot. One of the challenges that was brought up was because of the nature of your workforce, so many jobs are part-time, quarter-time, seasonal, that it's hard for folks to get a traditional mortgage loan. So thinking a little more outside the box, not only about financing for people to be able to buy, to qualify for rentals, but also for the development community. And with that, I'll go ahead and stop the screen share and take questions.
A lot to digest.
Yeah, that's a lot.
A quick one right off the bat. How did you get to the number 525,000 as and under as an affordable priced home?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what we typically do is I'll take a look at what's affordable, what's available right now, and then we look at we divide your employment industries. We attach those growth industries, projected growth industries to a wage and then to an affordable unit. So 525 is a nice round number that would accommodate a moderate wage household that we anticipate there will be some employment growth in the future and where there's not housing available. And I would say that assumes a current interest rate. So, we typically replicate a lower down payment, assuming that that type of household could get assistance through CHAFA, through some state programs. We do a little more than the prevailing interest rate. So we look at like an FHA loan, for example. A bump in an interest rate, even of 1 percentage point really changes what somebody can afford. So that would be operating conditions right now with a 30-year mortgage.
I'd like to acknowledge the massive step forward from the more general presentation that we received a couple months ago. I mean, the level of detail included in this one and being specific to Silverton is incredibly helpful. So I just want to say thank you for taking the questions and feedback from that presentation and turning it into this really valuable piece of information for us.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I would note that in the regional report, which is coming out this week, there's an appendix and San Juan County is part of that appendix. And so you can see, your part of the region compared to all others in the Southwest COG region in that report too. So there's a lot more detail. That's about an 80-page report. And then there's an online dashboard as well that is interactive. So you check San Juan County and compare it with Montezuma, for example, and see fluctuations between 2019, 2018, and 2010.
One question that I did have, two questions that I had is the data available was through 2019, I think, and we've seen a lot of growth since 2019. And I'm curious if you have recommendations for us in figuring out how to address affordable housing in Silverton to take into account some of those more recent changes, because we're going to make decisions to be implemented in 3 to 5 years, it seems, hopefully a little sooner, but also needing to account for more recent updates. So what's the best way to manage that? And for us, I think it's fortunate that our number differences are fairly small. Like if we're talking about needing 18 units instead of 14 units of a certain type, that's not nearly as drastic as a community where if you're lagging 2 years in data, it's like you needed 200 units instead of the 105 that you built. So what are some ways that we can look at closing our knowledge gap as we define our plans?
And actually some preliminary 2020 data just came out too. I took a look at those. So for your size of a community, your margin of error is big enough that I wouldn't worry so much about that exact, data point as much as the general direction. And so if I felt like there was going to be a really big economic shock that was going to change demand, both to own a home in Silverton, to visit Silverton, then I would say, take this cautiously, move cautiously. If I felt like Colorado was going to change dramatically in the next couple of years, I would be more conservative in those estimates. But the way that we look at our recommendations are both in terms of the general direction that we think your economy is going in, what we're hearing from employers, what we're seeing in terms of recent trends in workforce and lack of housing for workforce, as well as just sort of a gut feeling of what may make sense. It's a little bit about, like in an urban area, planning around homelessness. If I know that there are 4,000 people or 5,000 people, but I only have the resources to serve 3,000, it's not to say that I don't care about that additional 1,000, but I really want to manage to that 3,000. So my recommendation would be, the numbers that we've forecasted, if you can hit close to those, you'll be much better off than you would be if you didn't do anything, obviously, or if you hit a lower number. If somebody came into town and said, or you got a big infusion of money or land, and you were able to do more, I think based on what we heard from your employers, I would do more. I mean, I would try to do as much as you can in terms of affordable housing. The reality is that you'll be resource constrained, construction season constrained, and just capacity constrained, that I wouldn't worry too much about 2020 number that's going to be maybe a little larger than 2019.
So would like a good application of that recommendation to be to look at of the 36 total units viewed in the new housing needs, with 22 as permanent residents and 14 as seasonal surge, rather than looking at those specific numbers, looking at the percentages of which breaks down roughly to 60-40 of 60% permanent resident housing and 40% seasonal surge housing.
Yeah. I think that would be very reasonable. And honestly, the seasonal surge piece is coming directly from employers. So we don't have, employment data are really, they're quirky, the secondary data. So that's coming right from your employers saying, this is about what we think we need.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a bunch of work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my question, Gloria. We have development contracts with contractors out in Anvil Mountain. Is that correct? For the low income. Well, I think the county is in charge of that right now, right? So.
Right, but
how do we get those guys moving out there? Because as far as I can tell, there's 6 single family low income lots that have nothing going on them right now.
So there's 2 things going on there. We have the vacant lots that we are looking at developing through this CHAPA grant that we're applying. Well, we actually applied for.
Are those multifamily?
And part of it's for the multifamily lots that's right above the current apartments. And then the other is, and I was informed it's called the donut hole and not the burrito. So the other one is on each side of the the donut hole. So, and those are, we were thinking somewhere around like duplexes, but then the other one would be apartments. So that is what the CHAFA grant is looking at.
Okay. My question is towards the contractors that have development.
Sure. So there's
Contract.
actually some new funding available, and we're seeing if you're thinking like Brian and Nico are eligible for this new funding that CHAFA is coming out with. And we're actually in the talks right now, trying to figure that out and see how we can get them. Maybe it's creative financing to try and help them, because right now the cost of the builds, they're not going to be affordable if they build. So they're trying to kind of offset that, and we're trying to find funding to offset.
I mean, we were having a hard time doing that 5 years ago before the spike in materials, so no surprise there.
Yeah, but now this problem is systemic. So now there's funding available and they're coming up with new funding solutions that we could probably tap into. So Beth Kramer has been in contact with both Brian and Nico out there, trying to figure out how we can get them in contact with this new CHAFA funding that might be available for them. And it's not really funding, it's more of a financing to help them through.
Okay, I mean, if they have spoken for the lots and they say that they're going to develop them and they haven't done it yet, I mean.
And that's hopefully what we can do.
Maybe we should try to attract a different contractor.
Yeah, and that's hopefully kind of something we can look at after this CHAFA fund. CHAFA will come back with their technical assistant grant and give us plans, architectural, like what's possible there. And then we can use that to apply for a Department of Housing grant to help offset those costs and make it affordable. No matter how much the build is, hopefully Department of Housing would help us with keeping that cost low. So.
I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there's been a lot of progress in Gunnison County using locally sourced natural materials. I've even got word that they're making Adobe sheetrock on site for virtually nothing. The cost is the labor, and the labor's free because it's a Habitat home. Is there any opportunity that we can continue to explore some of those options?
Absolutely. I'll bring it up in our next affordable housing task force.
Because that's just, in my mind, that's just one more way to cut the cost and potentially build a home for cheaper.
Yeah, and that's probably something too we can mention to the consultants that are tied in with this grant, because we don't have to go out for a bid. That's the great part about this. These consultants come and they cherry pick which projects they would like to do. And that's something we could probably inquire with them, saying what are the alternative materials that we can use that are locally sourced. So yeah, I'll definitely reach out to them on that one.
Didn't we have a gentleman come out to talk about alternative?
We did, and it just kind of got swept under the rug, and I'm just bringing it back to light because it's one way that we can not only do something that has a better impact on the environment by reducing our carbon footprint, but we can also cut the cost of building a home, which seems to be the major hurdle and has always been the major hurdle here.
What if we bring that gentleman back out for another presentation?
Well, I don't know if we need more presentations from him, but if we could get with the guy in Gunnison County who's doing the Habitat homes, he's using some really neat, I'd call it technology, but it's all archaic. It's just mud and burlap, but he's doing it to cut costs, and it seems to be working.
Great.
Habitat homes in Gaskell County.
Great. I've got it on my list.
Thank you.
Aren't there time covenants for how long those developers have a right to develop those lots?
I would have to look into that.
I think to Jess's point, we can't pull anything back. We just have to honor covenants that are in whatever agreements we have.
Something to keep an eye on though, because if the need is there, but it's not getting done, then we're falling short somewhere.
Yeah.
Obviously, the need is there. And I can understand these guys need to make a buck too. But got an issue here. It's not going away.
Yeah.
Obviously.
There's no restrictions to do a home like that, to construct a home out of alternative materials, is there?
I would have to look at I would have to ask McDougal on that one, actually.
It's going to be the acceptance of the building codes, and a lot of the natural construction has been in a more recent, it's all that stuff's been addressed in more recent building codes. And I think our building codes were either in 2007 or 2011 were pretty outdated. So if we can get an update on our building codes and get something a little bit more new, they might have information in there that has the burn rate for 5/8 inch Adobe sheetrock, which is what Bill McDougal's gonna want to know. He's gonna want to know that technical stuff.
Well, and the desired expediency, get this done.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Something I would like to ask for is for the next step in this process also to include some potential suggestions for turning the more general short-term solutions suggested in this presentation into specific short-term solution proposals.
And that's actually something we met on last week with staff, and looking at the land that we already have that is in an avalanche zone, and looking at possible solutions for that temporary, maybe summer housing. So we're still kind of, each one of us has a task, and we're coming back together this Thursday to discuss it further, but we are investigating that currently.
Cool. And the last one relating to in short-term solutions was incentivizing property owners to rent long-term. I know we've really struggled with that. We've looked at the disincentive side. We've seen communities try the disincentive and get burned. It seems like disincentives are bad, but maybe incentives are good. And if there was a way to see our 40% winter vacancy rate be incentivized to become less, that could be super helpful.
Okay, so maybe looking for programs that incentivize, maybe like a little research or a memo put together for that.
Yeah, and something else that Heidi mentioned in that same vein is making sure we don't lose the current stock of renters who are currently renting to long-term renters. So incentivizing, but I think also maybe recognizing or rewarding / incentivizing owners that are currently keeping their properties in the stock.
If I could, it's actually Gunnison County, the new Housing Authority Director, Jennifer Kermode, who ran the program in Summit County. And so I'm happy to put you in contact with her, Gloria.
Thank you, Heidi.
I do think the Division of Housing is thinking about this. It was out of the Strategic Housing Working Group. So there is some movement or energy at the state level as well.
Awesome. It is getting late. Anything else on this one? Cool. Heidi, this is super helpful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have my direction to look into the Gunnison County Habitat Homes. Look into any time covenants for our developers out at Anvil, and then look into incentivized programs and recognizing rewards. Did I miss anything? Okay.
Awesome. All right, moving on to our last continued business item, 9B, election updates, draft ballot amendments to be discussed. That's what I have from the beginning of the meeting.
So I'm actually going to turn this over to Marty and Sarah. Sarah Mordecai is our temporary election clerk, and I want to let you know, I shared the latest ballot language with them. That was emailed to us, so they have that copy of that. Yeah.
If you guys have any questions about the documents,
And just for the record, what was in the packet is not the official ballot. This is what we have on your desks is more in line with what will be actually printed.
Maybe just because this wasn't in our packet and for the benefit of the community who may be watching or coming back to watch our meeting later, but wants to know about this. I just wonder if we can go through, I think what you have over here kind of explains it, the OHV measure 1, OHV measure 2, to explain how to vote for what the outcome that you're looking for.
yeah, so I have been reaching out to a couple of like expert election clerks and then our attorneys as well, specifically about that language, the like explanation in the OHV, and that it was really not appropriate to have that near on the ballot itself. And so we decided to go ahead and pull that. I think it's going to be a little bit smaller. It'll be like a quarter sheet. And it'll fit because the ballot itself will end up being 8.5 by 14 folded. And then this will be a quarter sheet that's tucked inside of that so that the language is still available, but it's just not actually on the ballot itself. So that's what this piece is. It's a little larger than it will actually be. And then I think what came in, what you received in your packet, I mean, versus this is what I'm hoping we just approve tonight and I can send it to the printer in the morning with any like final changes, because we really need to get this to press. I feel like the one that's on your desk in front of you has all of the pieces that, you know, have come about in the last week. It's all the language, nothing has changed. That you guys originally approved, except pulling that and moving it to a separate sheet is really the only major change.
And we can't change the language in the petitions anyway. Those are.
You guys said that.
Well,
voted for that and, oh, and the petitions, no.
yeah, no, it's all, yeah, no, that's set anyway, so we don't,
It is,
that's,
totally.
yeah.
It's really just that format of taking those explanations out and putting them on a separate paper.
Seems much more clear to me. So if this were to go, when this goes to printer tomorrow, when does it get mailed out to voters?
Yeah, so the dates, it's with, between the 20th, which is 22 days prior to the election, and the 27th, which is 15 days prior to the election. That's the window that we legally have to mail the ballots. So, you know, once we receive them, it'll go out within that window until it goes to press. I don't know exactly when I will receive them, but I know, I mean, we've been told we'll receive them in that window for sure, if not before. So that would be, yeah, the 20th and the 27th. Just for, you know, transparency, I did want to say I want to say it's 4 UOCAVA ballots, or, you know, people registered, and those should have been mailed 45 days prior to the election, which was August 28th. And without this, you know, I just came on last week, and without it being approved, you know, until the 30th, you know, that window has passed. And so we will mail those out with the rest. And they have an additional 8 days after the election for their votes to be counted. So there is a little bit of leeway on the time for those votes to be counted. So if it's really close, you know, we may not certify until the 8-day period after the election.
And there's 4 of those. So if there's any votes that are within 4, that'll be okay. And there were a couple of people that said that they didn't get ballots in the April 20 election. If someone doesn't get a ballot in their PO box, do they reach out to you or to Gloria, or what's the best way to?
Me for sure. That's why we set up that email. That's going to be really helpful for people to communicate. And then Melina and I will take a series, right? Okay. We will sit down in the next few weeks because she'll be the face of the office, and I may even hold some office hours closer to the election, you know, if needed. I'm not sure how that will look, but I think we'll check in and make a plan so that we're on the same page and she can support that piece in town hall to get people their ballots accordingly.
Cool.
And of course, that registration list comes directly from the county. So if people are questioning their registration or where their ballots are going, that's where they should check, is with LaDonna there, the county clerk. And then if they need an absentee ballot, they would come here. We have some printed in the front office that they can turn in, or they can request those via email as well.
Awesome. My only other question is some community members have asked about what the process is to request or become a watcher.
There is a form for that, and I will prepare that. It would actually have to come from someone who's one of you or a petitioner, I believe. I don't know if anyone can just be a watcher. I think it has to. Let me do some.
So that was a question. I didn't know.
There's going to be a form to fill out, and actually, I don't know. Maybe our attorney can answer that question. I don't know if you know the process about watchers.
We'll need to double check it because it's going to be different in this special election, probably, that it would be in a normal general election.
Great, so we'll research that and get back to you.
Cool. Any other questions or discussion? And the request is to approve this.
I think it's,
it's already approved. This is just for your review.
It has already been approved. The language did not change, only the placement of some of the language based on the election clerk's understanding of where it needed or could not be placed.
Okay.
And you spoke to clerks around.
Yeah, there's one woman I've been working with. She's been running elections in Colorado municipalities for 20 years. And so she's been really helpful anytime I've called her or emailed her. And then of course,
She's local?
No,
Regional?
she's out of the Front Range. And that's what she does at the Clerks Institute, is she teaches people about elections. So I trust her knowledge there. And then Marty and Lane have helped me a couple of times if I have some questions. I mean, it's really a process. So since the language is already there, I mean, I feel like prepared to send it off to print and get it out.
I've worked on general elections with Scantron sheets. We would call Scantron sheets. So seeing obviously the petition language and then also the response from the individual being is a little foreign to me, especially because that looks like it's almost campaign language. It's campaign speech. So I was kind of interested in that and how that plays into this type of an election.
I believe it's pretty unusual, but, well, you know, not unusual, but this isn't common. But my understanding is that the trustees used their 300 words accordingly, and you guys approved it.
No, it's fantastic. I just want the folks at home to better understand this as well, because this was not in the packet. A variation of it.
Right.
All right.
We'll have a notice in the paper on Thursday as well. I received that from Lane today. I don't know if it's verbatim this, but you know, if the public has any questions, you can refer them to that election email.
Do the folks at home have did they find the rebuttal section surprising, Jim? Is that would it be helpful if Marty kind of described why we were given an opportunity to provide a 300-word statement?
Oh, I think that'd be helpful.
Because the statute provides for it. You've moved from the OHV issue to the recall issue. Am I correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, we just spent, I mean, so at least those subject to the recall have learned a lot over the last few months because we've had to be advised on like what we're supposed to do in this process. And so we received a lot of input about what we're allowed to do and why there's a up to 300-word statement in here. But I think Jim's right. The members of the public haven't received that same level of education. So like a brief, like you just said, the statute provides. And then if you could just finish that saying that we're allowed a rebuttal statement. I think that's all that.
No, that's where I was going with this.
The statute provides that a rebuttal statement can be included. It doesn't mandate it. It doesn't require it. It simply allows for it. And so it's that simple.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. I'm just really, really tired and I don't really understand what the question is other than you wanted to know why they were being allowed to put in essentially a campaign statement. The statute simply provides for it.
The statute provides the language that says you can.
That is correct.
Right,
They're
not
that they're required to.
Exactly.
Simply they
Exactly.
may.
Yeah, that's all I was getting at.
All right,
And
that's
then
it.
just for clarification for the folks watching at home.
Yep.
That was it. And I do know it's late and I do apologize. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for sticking around.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, Sarah. Wow.
All right. Anything else on there? We good?
Good.
Cool. All right. At this time, we will move to our closing public comment. And as noted at the beginning of the meeting, please have your public comment relate to agenda items. Gary.
You discussed earlier staff discount on rentals of town property for events. I just want to remind you that that recreation center belongs to each and every citizen equally. The town staff and hired employees are among the best compensated in town. And by giving them that perk of some kind of discount, you may as well be kicking a hornet's nest down the street. You're going to get so much feedback from people who think that's totally unfair. You shouldn't even consider doing that without doing your homework. Secondly, when you asked, could you comment earlier, even though you had stated you're going to recuse your vote concerning the ambulance association because somehow you might profit, I'd like to remind you, I've been in this room more hours than any of you have in this environment over the last couple of decades. And through many iterations of the group sitting at this table, that discussion of, can I give you my comments even though I'm not going to vote on it, has always come down to the town's bylaws can be interpreted that Robert's Rules of Orders is a guideline and a research and a tool for you to use in making your decisions. If you want to stick strictly to the Robert's Rules of Orders, if you don't have a copy, I'll bring you mine tomorrow. But it has been repeatedly discussed in this room through many mayors and many town attorneys. And it's always come down to where it's intelligent enough to use the guidelines to make the decisions that work. And if you can't discuss the issue, even though we know you're not going to vote for or against it, that's been proven to be not what people want. If you want to discuss a school fundraiser, should those two get up and leave the room because their comments are no longer valid, even though they're not going to vote on it? When you're going to discuss 4th of July fundraising, does Molly have to get up and leave the room because she's not going to vote on it? Her comments are no longer valid. The comments are valid because often that person has more background and insight and can help you make a better decision when it does come to your vote, even though you're going to recuse. I've heard several town attorneys give that same reasoning. Stay there. Be part of the discussion. Give your fellow trustees the benefit of your knowledge on whatever issue it is you're talking about.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay.
And there's no one else in the room tonight, so do we have any Zoom comments? All right. Our next meeting is on September 27th. The time is 10:29 PM and I adjourn this meeting. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.